camera that is live is this one up here.
I will move it. It's going live now.
We're live now. Thank you very much. I welcome everybody to the council meeting Thursday, the 25th of March. And in terms of, I have apologies from Councillor Angus Gordon and Councillor Jill Duncan. And I have an apology that I need to leave the meeting at about 3 o'clock. I have a flight to catch this afternoon for an important meeting. At that stage, the chairmanship will pass to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Nigel Belsham. Thank you, Nigel, for being able to accommodate that. Would somebody like to so move that those apologies be? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Hanapa. Thank you very much. Thank you. In terms of public forum, we have 2 public forums today, and I'll introduce them now and explain how a public forum works. The first one will be from my Tuia rep, Te Aroa Ratana, and Awa will be able to come up and talk to you a little bit around what the Tuia program is for rangatahi and how that works, and how he could see a possible relationship going forward. Obviously, I'm priming him on the conversation a little bit here. And the second one will be on Mark McCord from Taihape Squash Club's perspective, and we'll welcome you shortly. The rules around public forum, for those who are listening in, you have the opportunity to put a case in front of council. You have 10 minutes, which includes question time. How you use that time is up to you. The people, it is a dialogue coming from the people presenting, but it also gives an opportunity for councillors to ask questions. Thank you very much. First of all, I'll move to my good friend Awa, if you would like to come up and introduce yourself and explain a little bit about who you are, what your role is, and the Tuia program.
Katangi atu ko te manu tū, e tū atu ki a tātou kāsua. E karanga te manu te pō, te manu te ao kiko. Atu wiwi tū wawai. O te huti a te waiko waua ko te rākau ko turakina. Ka tīkei kia o ku wai ko rangi tīkei. Ka pūkana o ku karu ki roto mana watu. Ngā wai kaukau o ngā tūpuna, ngā wai he runga o ngā kuia a tihei wā mauri ora. O te moana, tangi moana, e riporipo ana. Te awa rangi tīkei e tere nei. E tangiti kapakapa e kawia ngā ingoa ko rātau mā ngā mate ua. E ngaru i te pō. Ko Aunty Lana tēnā, mai te maraia pūpata te. E hoki ana ki te tāpekepeke o te mau ngā toko rangi. Ko ngā ika hoki tēnā, mai te maraia tini waitara. Te awa rangi tīkei e tere nei. Ko Aunty Tona hoki tēnā, mai te maraia tokorangi. Ko Mr. P tēnā, mai te huru hāra mahau ki Ngāti Haua. Nā reira e ngā rangatira e moi maira. E pōkeru ana te ngākau ki te kitiati a koe taku rangatira waru. Ara hoki kia koe koro alokwān. Georgie, tēnā koe, Peter, Andy, taku koe, Aunty Coral, tēnā koe. Ara hoki kia koutou, kia koe Nigel. Ara kia koutou, a te kaunihera a māku rā no te mihi ati ki a koutou. A tēnā koutou. Ko wai nei e tūake nei, a ko te aroa mā tātua pōti ki rātana taku ingoa, e ki a mai taku koraua he ingoa rangatira tēnei, he uri tēnei no te arawa waka, Ngāti Whakaue, o whata te marae, ngongotaha te maunga, Ngāti Whakaue te iwi, o toru anui a kahu mata momoi te awa, mai make tū, ki tonga riro, ko te aroa waka, te aroa tangata, te aroa tūturu e mihi ati ki a koutou, tēnā koutou. Mai te taha o taku kui, anō ngā puhi nui tonu, the Naughty North, ko tērā taku whānau, te whānau hei mai tēnā wāhi. Arai tēnei wāhanga mai rātana pāhoki au, he moko puna tēnei o wiremu rātana, nā reira māku rā anō e mihi atu ki a koutou, tēnā koutou. As Andy said, I'm the 2-year rep for our rohe, for at the Rangitike rohe, and sadly I missed out on the first wānanga this week, the weekend that just went up in Hamilton at Awhitiroa Marae, due to a tangi up in Murupara. But our next one's in about 6 weeks down in Dunedin. And I know Andy was prepping me for those questions, but it was a bit last minute, bro. Well, I had nothing planned. He just told me, you can come to council meeting at 1 p.m. and introduce yourself. And then he throws these other questions onto me. But yeah, so I couldn't really tell you much about the 2-year program or how it runs because I missed out on that first wānanga and I'm pretty gutted. But what I read though is that in the booklet, that it all stems from that tauparapara I used at the start, tuia I runga, tuia I raro, tuia I roto, tuia I waho, tuia te here ngā tangata. And that's actually the name of the wānanga. So the first one was tuia I runga, one down in Dunedin, tuia I raro, and then rotorua, tuia I roto. Then we have one down in Pōneke in Wellington, tuia I waho. And then our last one in Tāmaki Makovid, yes, but that's me.
Perhaps with your permission, with some of your time, I could explain what the 2-year program is. So the 2-year program comes out of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs and local government. And this is where a group of mayors select someone that becomes a mentor that we can engage with. The mentoring process is a 2-way deal. So basically, I have this brilliant opportunity to learn from our. I think just about. Now it's moved on where the majority of councils will have a 2-year. Some of them have more than one, but it is that mentoring process. It also involves some community aspects in terms of service. I haven't told you about some of that bottom line there. But we will meet reasonably regularly. We had breakfast together the other day, and we can talk around what council functions and things are happening. Awa has access to my diary, so he can also look at things that are going on in our world of local government. It gives them the opportunity to also say, hey, this looks really cool. How can I learn from it? This is, Awa has the ability and obvious presence to become an incredible leader in our community.
Yeah.
He's hidden his life a little bit under a bushel. Would you like to explain your role at Rangitikei College last year?
So last year I was our Kaarahi, which is a Māori prefect, pretty much just mentoring any Māori student. He needed the extra push. I was also head boy up at the college. It's not really an important role, but but yeah. What else did I mean, I was working down here at the council as well last year, more on the youth side. So I was running the youth space. And yeah, I was a big part of the LTP, or not big, but I was a part of the LTP as well. And yeah.
And now?
And now I'm down at James Cook teaching to do Māori.
So, are you happy for us to take questions? Any questions from councillors?
Ai te tuatahi e te tuaki ki te miha tika hoi te rangatira. I just want to acknowledge that within this one presentation is the paradox of what it is to be Māori. We have someone so young who is flexing the muscles of ancient knowledge just in that short thing that he said, but it's quite powerful what he has shared with us. The other thing is that as a Māori stands, it is not limited to one space and time. We are talking not only the far north, down south, all over the country is existent in this one person that he speaks in front of us. And so he's bringing all of that to this table. So I want to acknowledge that and just mihi to you with a lot of love and respect for what you've done. Kia ora.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. And I thank the school for giving you a little bit of your time off to be with us today. But as I said, it is a two-way street. You know, that what I can learn from Awa is incredibly important. So, cheers. You will probably see more of him where he might, you know, pop in and listen to some of the functions and things we go through in local government.
Tēnā koutou.
The next public forum who will undoubtedly introduce themselves with exactly the same effort. Mark McCord talking to us about Taihape Squash Club, and if you'd like to come and join us, as I said, you are live. I suspect Mum is watching us through this camera. Got the wave out of the way.
Sorry guys, I'm not going to be quite that insane, but I'll do my best. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Mark McCord, this is Daryl O'Hara, he's the current president of the Squash Club. So I've got a prepared statement, I've got some stuff in your notes, but I've got a prepared speech, so you just have to endure that, I'm afraid. And then we've hopefully got the time for any things that we can fill gaps in the knowledge that you'd like to know. So first up, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you today and taking the time to view our proposed concept plans and reading the attached overview that has been submitted into your council papers. This process started for the Taihape Squash Club in September 2020 when council approved a section of land on what was the former Taihape Bowling Club for a much needed club expansion to cater for our growing membership. This will give us the capability to run not only provincial but national competitions. This will be the only squash club within the Rangitikei district able to host such events. We last had the opportunity to speak to you and share our club expansion plans in the November council meeting so you could make an informed decision on the positioning of the planned amenities build. Following that decision being made, we engaged in discussions with our neighbouring sporting clubs, Memorial Park users and community groups, and as well as Kokako Street Hall users. From those discussions, we realised the significant support for a redevelopment of the entire area that could be coordinated with our expansion plans. We successfully applied for funding and commissioned Copeland and Associates to develop 3 different concept plans, the most popular of which is in front of you today. The key points of note were an additional playing surface for tennis, retention of the green space in front of the Kokako Street Hall, as well as parking, toilets and rubbish bins to cater for the high volume of cars, camper vans and trucks that utilise the area. Netball are strong supporters of our proposed plans and have indicated that resurfacing of the existing courts and improved lighting are of a high priority. Since the concept plans were formulated, tennis has chosen to take an independent path, so their current priorities we are unsure of. The current users of the Kokako Street Hall have indicated that a renovated or replaced building would not only benefit them now, but also future-proof their growing memberships and also potentially cater for some of the many groups that were displaced by the closure of the women's club rooms. We have always considered council as key partners in getting this process to be realised. Your advice and guidance to how to progress from the plans that we have submitted today and how they can be suitably formatted and included into council's long-term plan, and can then from there be successfully actioned for the future benefit of our clubs, groups and community. So that's, sorry to get into that, I'll put that down and just ask, fire away if there's anything that that you'd like to know that's not clear with the notes you've got and what we've just spoken about there.
You're happy to take the questions. First of all, just in terms of clarification, you've talked about the relationship with tennis, etc.
Yep.
Do we take this as a submission to the long-term plan from the two of you or from yourselves? Are you requesting that this be considered as a submission?
Yeah, there's obviously some gaps in it because tennis have chosen to take an independent path because I think they feel that there's a few things that they want.
Yep. Sorry,
so I think they will submit individually. So this is predominantly squash and netball, but also consideration for our community groups that are surrounding there, particularly the Kokako Street Hall users.
Yeah, sorry, I meant netball, tennis.
So,
That's my mistake, not yours. But do we take this as a submission to the LTP, or will you submit separately to that process?
I suppose the question becomes: is what we've submitted, is that fitting to be submitted in its current form?
Perhaps you may want to get in touch with Mrs. Hall and that process. We'll take questions from councillors. Councillor Belsham.
Thanks, guys. So financially, what is your request of council?
Well, that's something that we need to sit down and have an open conversation with you guys over. We have approached external funding, Department of Internal Affairs. They've been very supportive of the plans that we've put in front of you, spoken to the 4 regions. So while financial support would be of a huge benefit to us, we are prepared to source external funders to go with whatever you'd be prepared to help us with. But obviously there's, shared services that might be available. The NDF sent through stuff, there is potential grants on offer and the like. So, and help and guidance through with resource consent and other consenting processes. So it would be just a good conversation to have as to where you could help us, and then we could step in with external sources, because we realise that it's going to it'll be a joint process to get it over the line.
Thank you. Thank you. Question, Makala.
You say that you're going to share the services or shared services with netball. Is it a competition? Do they have competitions up there? How often is it used? Who? How many?
Yeah, we're going through that process of collecting, numbers and all that sort of stuff. So we've gone into this as a squash club, but it's sort of snowballed out to take in all these other groups. So we're waiting for sort of wish lists and what they want, and that's how we've come up with that that plan at this stage. But they'll have their own wants and that. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, great looking plan, but reading this document, which we've got in front of us and was circulated to us a couple of days ago, so we've had time to sort of digest it, and looking at it in conjunction with the plan that you've got here, there's many different stages to it, and you've listed the council new amenities box and obviously some council facilities in here. So you are looking really at your number 1 on this here, which is the extension. So that's really what you're focusing on. These other things are external to that, or is this
It's
all-encompassing?
All-encompassing. So we started the process as Tai Happy Squash Club.
Yeah.
Because I've obviously got a growing, vibrant club, and so that's where we started. But for anyone that has ever taken a walk around that area, it's been neglected for a long time. It's really in need of a makeover. So we saw a real opportunity while we were doing what we were doing to take the whole community and other groups with us, and try and have a cohesive plan along the way. And it may well have to be broken up into stages, and that's why we wanted to come and talk to you today about it. So we can take it from where it is and then get it so that we can end up with an end result which will give us facilities and that will be used for our town for 30, 40, 50 years.
Subsequent question, if I may.
Can I just have an indication how many other councillors wish to speak? I know I've got Councillor Hero. Anybody else? I'll take your subsequent question.
Just very, very quickly, it does come back to the question about whether this is broken down to stages. Do you have any cost analysis or anything that you put in? You may choose to say not at this stage, and if you do, that's fine for me. With regards to stage one being your extension build, has that been costed, and what portions of what we're looking for have actually been costed?
Well, we have costed. Daryl can answer that one.
Yeah, we've actually put the last 5 months, I think, the effort's been around consultation with all the other user groups and that. So we've only just started touching on that of different options. We went a few days the other day to price different sort of options and that sort of thing. So
Thank you.
really days, yeah.
Councillor Hero.
So my question is, just a mihi to you both for bringing for what you brought to the table. My question is, when this is a whole development project, has it been you were as you were part of the park users group in the past, so you would have seen the amenities build and what that plan was, and so was that some of your thinking around things when again you're looking at that whole concept development as opposed to just looking at the squash club itself?
It's the whole entire area.
Yeah.
So obviously, the only thing on that upper level that you can see there, so above the existing tennis and netball courts, the only thing that's been approved for expansion within that area is the area that you allocated us for in the squash club expansion. There is user groups using the Korkako Street Hall, but the rest of it was the former bowling and croquet clubs. So what we've got down there as concepts are very much just ideas. It's a blank canvas. So the layout of the parking relative to the green space and all that, that's where some further discussions with council and community need to go to get it to fit for purpose.
What's your membership like in terms of the squash club now, and what's been the sort of changes in membership over the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah. So we've got the last records, we've got 125 members, 124 members. I think it's one less than what the main club in Wanganui have. So we've got a huge chunk of our population that are playing it. A lot of farmers though. There's probably 50-60% of farmers now, and it's turning into quite a family atmosphere. So yeah, it's growing to the stage where we actually have to have we're holding business house on a Monday and a Thursday. We've got up to, I think it's nearly 90 players, I think, in that. So it's got too big. But the membership's got too big for our club. So and we've always wanted to expand, and this is the first time that, because we've been sort of landlocked, this is the first chance we've had to do it. And like I said, we're 5 months into it, and we still haven't really looked at our own club at this stage properly. We know what we know what we want as a club in that space, but it's just got out like you've seen, a real community project. So
just to add to that for this time, the other thing that we've tried to be very clear with all of the user groups in that area is that if we get the expansion in the way that we want, we're hoping to be able to cater to for AGMs, small conferences and the like. For myself, I'm quite active in the Deer Farmers Association, and we take our meetings out of town every single year to Okuni because we can't accommodate in town for the numbers. So our thoughts were with that expansion, we'll have something, we'll have some facilities that'll be available to hire with a commercial quality kitchen included that can be hired out. Now that may benefit all of the user groups around us, as well as the community with the specialist meeting space as well. And the idea and so one of the things that we've attempted to do is with talking to the community is not only get what they would like, but share what we're intending to put in so we don't duplicate services. So we can say to them, they've got, this is what we can provide, and then they can put their thinking caps on as to how that may fit with their plans.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Having played on those courts and probably not played very well, having been there reasonably often, congratulate you, and I congratulate you on the amount of effort that you're going and talking to your neighbours as well. So undoubtedly down the track we will receive some further submissions from you and other members of the community up there. So thank you very much for taking time.
Thanks.
And as I said, you're welcome to stay for full council if you wish. Yes. Councillors, I'll remind you of the conflict of interest declarations. Do I have anybody making declarations at this stage around conflicts of interest? No. Moving on to item number 5, the confirmation of order of business. There'll be some late supporting information with regard to 10.3 from staff. There'll be some extra pieces associated with my mayoral report, and I'll deal with those then. Any further change?
Yes, Your Worship, item 11.1 is no longer on the agenda.
Thank you very much.
It will be reported in April.
Does everybody hear that? So item 11.1 on the agenda will be reported in April. Thank you. Moving now to the confirmation of minutes, looking for alterations, corrections, starting page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yes.
Amendment sought.
To Nui Rural Water Scheme, Water Supply Scheme, reads Councillor Carter had made further calls within the community. It was actually Councillor Lambert. Councillor Carter's a very busy man.
But I'll take it forward.
Would somebody like to second that as an amendment too? Thank you, Councillor Carter. You still want to be on the box there. Provide those. We'll take any further amendments first. So looking at page now 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Would somebody therefore like to move? Thank you, Councillor Belsham, Councillor Carter. Those in favour? This is as amended. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Excuse me, Your Worship, have they been changed already?
No, because the papers went out. Just an error on page 12 that we will note. It wasn't MB that were advised around the Tutanui Rural Water. It was MFE.
Sorry, I might just, it's only this.
Oh, okay. MFE. Sorry, the historic Portorino Road landfill.
And it was
That's
altered on the
MFE.
electronic
Yes.
one already, so I won't take that as a further amendment.
Just to note.
The issue when I'm working off 2 different sheets. Thank you. Moving on then, we now have the follow-up of actions, the items from the previous meeting. This is item number 19. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, everyone's in the room, hopefully that can answer any questions, so happy to take it as read.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? No, wouldn't then somebody like to move that the report, the follow-up items? Thank you, Councillor Wilson moving, seconded. Councillor Hira, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to the item number 8, the Mayor's report, starting page 23. I'm not going to obviously read it all, but there are some additions to it. The first addition is you will have some tabled documents, I hope. I'm asking them to be tabled, handed out now, around the North Island Regional Passenger Rail Connector Strategy Workshop. I know that Councillor Ash, for example, has a high degree of interest in the provision of connectiveness, if that's a correct word, between towns and centres. So this is where a group of mayors have got together and engaging with Kiwi Rail and the ministers under land transport to say that there has to be a commuter network. So in the far north, we have a very good rail links between Hamilton and Auckland. We have connections between Palmerston North and Wellington. They're proposing a number of services that could be explored with multiple stops. 2 potential stops in our district would be Martin and Taihape. I've lobbied for, as part of this group, to look at this whole network. There are some realities around where rail transport is in New Zealand at the moment. For instance, there just literally isn't enough rail stock to be able to provide a double service per day. There are difficulties in that our rail network is a single track network and it's focused very heavily on freight movement. So if you went down this path, there'd need to be more passing zones. Capital required to install this is very, very significant, especially if it was going to be full electrification, which doesn't exist on all of the line at the moment. However, it is important we carry on the conversation and see where we can take it. So is that we committed a sum of $2,000 to be part of this conversation. And I can update you as things go along, but this document will give you some idea of the options that are open. I was on a conference call for a couple of hours yesterday with regard to this. Some of the mayors are thinking maybe there should be 3 groups, and there'd be the Hamilton North group and Palmerston South group, and the central mayors could go it alone. I've advocated strongly that if we're not all in this together, nothing will ever happen. So we need the leverage off the rest of the district. One of the problems with commuter traffic is that commuters want to get from A to B quickly. They're not interested in multiple stops. They're interested in speeded travel and cost saving. Whereas tourist trains, which are very different animals, they like ambling along, stopping at multiple stops. So this is not about tourist traffic. I'll just deal with, are there any questions around this? I guess the bottom line, it is worth us being at the table to at least understand the network, because we are the division of the main trunk line, literally. The next document that you will have is information around climate change. What we're asking at this stage, there's a huge amount of information with these things to take on board, but there's the chance to make submissions. And we're saying if you could take some time over tomorrow, essentially, to have a look at it, and if you have any points that you think should be built into a submission, to come back to us. Any questions around that? No. I would also like to point out a couple of things that have happened that are not part of my report. First of all, the Martin Development Group have had a soft launch opening of the new playground this morning. The chief executive and some of the councillors were down there. And the involvement from staff and as a voluntary effort has been huge. The community has got behind this garden, this playground. It is amazing. On last Saturday, there were 2,000 plants to be dug into what was very, very hard ground and be marked. It was like a swarm of ants. So 2,000 plants were dug in a place of about 6 or 7 hours. The other night, there had to be, my guess would be near 40 tonne of sand moved into a gigantic sand pit. The sand's pretty heavy. We moved about a tonne of sand a minute by my calculations. If my guess about the rate is accurate, that's a pretty impressive feat. It had to be literally wheelbarrowed onto the site. So my congratulations go to particularly Lucy Scow and to the Martin Development Group and Brenna that made this possible. Essentially, our community has ended up with a $1.3 million playground that will take the time, councillors, to go down and have a look because it is outstanding. And it is the first time I understand ever in New Zealand that as part of the playground, Māori motifs have been engraved into the ground surface. You were down there this morning. Do you wish to add to it?
Only thing I'd add, Your Worship, I think you've represented it very well, and the people that were there, the pride in the work and the excitement of the children is noticeable. But just that this will be entered tomorrow before 4 o'clock into the New Zealand Playground of the Year Award. You know, that's another thing that could come from it, all going well.
And last thing from me is an addition to my report before I take any further questions around my report and engagements. I presented a bouquet of flowers to a couple in Scotts Ferry to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary. In the same way that we acknowledge, or when we know about it, for those that turn, for instance, 100 years of age. We don't obviously get notified of all of them, but it is an opportunity to be able to recognise them when we are notified. Take any questions with regard to my report or engagements. Councillor Delgado.
So we'll just keep my pardon. Sorry, I'm having trouble there. Is there any other questions? There is a question behind.
While you're juggling that, I'll take a question from Councillor Okara.
Your Worship, you have concerns about iwi engagement for the LTP. Do you have a suggestion as what you think might be, what a solution might be? If you believe that they're going to go back to the marae and ask for mandate and then you have to come back again.
That isn't the question I've raised is not so much around the LTP, it's around engagement with the Three Waters reform that is going on and aggregation of those services. So for those of you who are listening in or watching in, government has come out with a proposal that it's more efficient for potable water, wastewater and stormwater services to be provided by an aggregated source. So you'd have a company in Wellington or Auckland supplying various sectors of the market or some other combinations. My point is that staff and mayors have been engaged with a number of processes to upskill us. We're now at the stage where more and more councillors are being part of those conversations, and I congratulate councillors that have been to these hui and meetings. We have a decision to make this year around whether we opt in or opt out of what is the most significant change to local government ever. And my suggestion around Maori engagement is that we believe that we engage well, and we believe that we engage through Te Rupe Ka, where we have iwi representatives. The reality is, for something of this nature, I am sure that the iwi representatives in Te Rupe Ka will say, we don't have a mandate from our marae or our rohi to make this sort of recommendation or change. So it's something that is raised within my mind. Councillor Hero, I thought you might ask a question, point something out.
Well, I don't know if it's a question, but really it's just a comment around it. And I think it's a very valid point that you brought up. And the dealings that I've had with this, and it's not just come through in a council space, but also come through in an iwi space. DIA is trying to make that effort to get into to iwi spaces. And I appreciate that within this, within the Rangiteke District Council, you know, within us, we do have Te Rōpūahi Ka, but it's only one, that's one element of it. A lot of it comes back to how well, how well the communication gets out from those delegates back to their mandated group that they're part of. And I just like to say that, and as a part of the Te Maruata for elected Māori members, this kaupapa has come across the at a recent online Zoom meeting. This kaupapa has come up for us, and yeah, it's going to be. It's not going to be anything easy. It's exactly the same. I feel that where council sits, iwi sits. And there are some definite, within the Te Rōpūahi Ka space, I would say that there are some sitting in there, because I sit in that group as well, that there are legitimate concerns from people about that whole communication and how it gets out there. But I don't think it's just as much there as it is here. If you know, it's not just in one area. And it is also the other thing that I would say from within an iwi space and the spaces that I'm in is that when you have no capacity necessarily around things, or you have 5 people trying to do 50 different kaupapa, it's very hard because you don't necessarily have the capacity around you to step into all of these different places and spaces that iwi are put into every single day. But yeah, I do total what you've put in there about the concern of it, because I believe that that is a principal worry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and I congratulate you on the amount of effort that you're going in through to become involved in this discussion. And I note that when you refer to DIA, you're referring to the Department of Internal Affairs. Just bearing in mind those people online. Councillor Dalgety.
My apologies for earlier. I see you attended the Rural Games. I'd be interested in your feedback.
Interesting one. So the background to this is that we were labelled as the one councillor in our region that didn't ascribe funding to the Rural Games in Palmerston North. I was offered a seat at the table of the dinner and other, courtesy things. I said that I would attend the Rural Games as an ordinary patron, if you like. So I did go across. Taurua Council were there. They had very limited exposure, would be the way I think I'd put it. Manawatu District, they had attended, it was away from the main area. They had attended, Manawatu District Council were there, and they really didn't have any material in the tent. And, I think probably the mayor was a little bit disappointed. I think both councils saw their benefits from being there as being low, would be my interpretation. Ruapehu, Mayor Don was there certainly for the dinner. I think he attended other times during the day, but they didn't seem to have a presence at all, nor did Wanganui. Yeah. Any further questions? No. Right, I'll move that my mayoral report be received. Looking for a seconder to that. Thank you, Councillor Hero was first. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving along, we now move into the Chief Executive's report. Starting page 29, I'll move over to the Chief Executive to take
Thank
us
you,
through
Worship.
that.
I'll just, of the points there, I will talk to points 2, 3, 7, 8 and 9. I'll take the others as read unless there's a question.
Can somebody move that we receive the report? So it's Councillor Dalgetty moving. Thank you, Councillor Panapa second. Those in favour? Aye. Are you happy to take questions as you go through?
Yes.
And sequence of order? Yes.
So point 2 is the health and safety dashboard, which you'll see in the appendix. This was also presented to Audit and Risk this morning. I'll repeat the questions that were asked there. The first one, which was the change in the title of the pie chart, top right-hand corner. We used to call it incident category, we now call it event category. It's just a word that we felt made better sense for the purpose of that pie chart. Second one is the notifiable incidents. You'll see there are 2. They were reported at our last council meeting, that both of which happened to our contractors and have been investigated. Yeah. But it's just, despite them being notifiable, they were non-injury events. I'm here to take any questions on the health and safety dashboard.
No, move straight along. Councillor Belsham, a question?
Yeah, question around, I guess, at a governance level, reading about the health and safety, and I raised this at Audit and Risk as well this morning, is great to see. But for peace of mind, I guess, from an elected member space, actually visually seeing health and safety in action, I think would be an excellent opportunity for governors to be able to see. And I think we've taken that undertaking from Audit and Risk, but certainly while all council members are here, perhaps you could comment on the undertaking from Audit and Risk this morning.
Thank you, Councillor. Personally, I was really grateful for your intervention this morning. I thought it was within Audit and Risk. I've explained to Audit and Risk that from a health and safety perspective, although I'm comfortable where we're at, we're on a journey. And one of the cultural things that I wish to see at this council is a greater involvement of our elected members in our health and safety work. And I say that it is not mandated to you under the Health and Safety at Work Act as it is to board directors. The example I gave this morning at Audit and Risk is the Pike River mine issue was broadly that directors were given the okay from the chief executive that things were fine, and the directors took that on as fact. And whilst I want to not necessarily go into that, that led to the Health and Safety at Work Act reforms that happened soon after that. And that was that professional directors or directors of boards should satisfy themselves directly of the competence and actions of health and safety at work. Now that doesn't, as I said, legislatively doesn't apply to elected members, but best practice says I would love for that to occur. And so the action or the undertaking that we took this morning, which I intend to apply, is to invite elected members to be able to look at some of our work sites, to look at some of the practices we have in place that should give you confidence in the health and safety that we apply at work.
Next question, Councillor Ash, sorry.
Thanks for that, Mr. Biggs. Really appreciate the opportunity to do that. So will this introduction to the health and safety from our getting involved with it, will there be a clear process so that we're not inadvertently messing around in operations that space that we're not meant to be in? How do we do that essentially?
Yeah, so what I said to this morning to Audit and Risk is that at each monthly executive team meeting, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor are both invited to attend a particular part of that, which is around health and safety. And that gives them visibility of the Health and Safety Committee's report to to the executive team, our response to that, and allows them to be part of that journey with us. Where the undertaking here is that I expect, and how I've done it in the past, is I would invite in the past directors, but in this case elected members, to a work site, and we'll walk you through and say these are the hazards that we deal with, and this is how we mitigate those hazards. And so you are fully familiar with the mitigation plans that we have in place.
Thank you. Councillor Hero.
Thank you for the report, and I think that it's great the way that this is put together. I just want to comment and just to thank you for the in the report around the wellbeing news and how that's in there, because as much as health and safety is about the physical, it's also about what are we as employers, what are we as a council doing for our staff. So that tells me something, that's a good indication of from my point of view for what you're doing in the senior exec management are doing in order to have things like this, have these types of things, counselling service available to be accessed, flu vaccinations and things like that. So that's another side of the health and safety bucket, if another side of it as well. So I just wanted to mahi to you about that. And can I just also say, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I just wanted to acknowledge what you're saying about having input from a governance lens, what that might look like. Wada and I were asked to have a look over the organisation's values. So, and what you've just said, that's how I see we contribute, to be able to give a point of view from an area on something like that, because that's directly about the organisational values of what we're working with our people, with our staff. So I just want to mahi to everybody for allowing Wada and I to have that opportunity.
Thank you.
Would you allow me to comment on values at this point, or would you rather?
No, that's fine.
So Councillor Hiroa has mentioned about her and Councillor Panapa's contribution to our organisational values. And you may recall just over a year ago, I presented to you some new values for the organisation, and that allowed you to comment on. Fast forward a year, and we took our staff away at the end of the year, and we brainstormed with them what this meant, what the values meant to them, and it gave us a really interesting insight into. And I'll give you an example where one of our values was we aspire to the highest standards. Particularly over COVID, etc., that put undue pressure on people who thought that aspiring to the highest standards actually meant work all hours of the night needed to do my job. That wasn't the spirit of what that value was anticipated. And so we have redeveloped our values and with some narrative that goes with it. And we'll be launching this in the next couple of weeks.
It starts next week.
Starts next week. And what perhaps you'd like to talk about Napo for us?
Yes.
Would you do that?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks, Peter. So yes, I mean, the values, the meaning behind the values was expanded as a result of staff feedback. And as part of that, actually, Laquan has led some work to add an additional layer to our values, where essentially they have been considered and aligned with some of the values in our MOU agreement with our districts iwi and Hapu through Te Rupu-Ahikā. And so what he's done is he's linked or likened the values to po, or pillars that hold up a whare house, and those po keep the house strong and steady. And likewise, our values keep Rangitikei District Council strong and steady, and our people strong and steady and well balanced. So each of our 6 values have been aligned to some fairly big concepts that we'll now have the opportunity to explore with our people in more depth. Do either of you want to add?
So I'd just like to add that, as far as I'm concerned, the document is a really awesome document. And I thought to myself, there'll be some of these things I can take up within my other hat of my own job of looking at that. Can I just add one other thing? What's interesting to me is if you look around the walls in this room, you wouldn't know that you're anywhere, to be honest. So one of the things I asked is whether or not we could have those reflective some way, shape or form within this room.
I agree. I think we probably need to move on a little bit in terms of the timeframe for the council today.
It is linked to health and safety, Your Worship, and I will conclude on that point that these are the values of our staff. This is what makes us an attractive employer. Helps us ensure that our people understand it's not just what they do, it's how they do it, in whatever capacity that feels right for them, which leads to their well-being. And which was the original question, long response, Your Worship. I'm sorry. Thank you. Moving point 3, which is the long-term plan update. The draft consultation document is with audit. We've received a number of questions. I'm yet to make contact with them to assess their comfort in the questions they're asking. I will let you know if there's going to be any change to the date of 8th of April that we have in my report. Point 7, Three Waters, His Worship has mentioned that, I cannot underestimate the decision that will be in front of you this year that you will make. And I just wish for you to have as much information as you can to support your decision. And I stand by to answer any question you may have. I intentionally copied you into the email that I'm presenting to staff. So that's at a more as an operational level, because staff are understanding that there is change and what does it mean to them. It's a very different presentation if I was to offer it to elected members. So it was just for your information rather than for your attendance. But I'm very happy to meet with you individually or in a group to go through this further if needed.
That there may be change rather than, so just stressing that council hasn't made a definitive position around the Three Waters. Could we just go back, just comment on item number 6, the resignation of the chair of Bulls Community Committee.
Yes.
It may well be appropriate from somebody from the Bulls ward prompting them to note a vote of thanks for the service from Tyrone, or I could do it, I'll move it. Not only as chair of that, but he has had a role within a number of other council functions, including the LTP and workshops and so on. So I'll move that we put a vote of thanks back to both the committee and to Tyrone personally. Looking for a seconder, Councillor Carter seconding. Any discussion? Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. You okay, Ash? Thank you. Carry on, please.
Just want to make sure we've got, it's now the resolutions. Was that reflective of your motion?
Certainly is.
Thank you.
Provided my seconder agrees, we'll take it as read. Thank you. We'll push on.
Point 8, the Regional Land Transport Plan submission to Horizons. In His Worship's report, he acknowledged that the high volume of submissions that staff are asked to make. I did receive one 2 weeks ago that was 768 pages long. And that's one of many that we are asked to respond to. unless there's a question on the our response, I'll move to point 9.
Just with regard to submissions, when we submit, and we will submit on a number of things, we'll elect not to submit on others because it's better off dealt with by other councillors, or we don't have a particular interest. But once you submit, and especially if you're asking to be able to speak to your submission, it opens a door in which you can bring up to some extent other subjects, or you can dwell for longer on the points raised. So the points raised there are fairly brief within the submission, but it means that you can talk at depth to that subject. Thank you.
9, welcoming communities. Whilst it's a small section in my report, I just wanted to pause on that and reflect on the work done by my staff and constantly looking at ways to increase our effectively our deliverables. And this one is 3 years worth of support in our communities. We know we've discussed at length our growth, etc. And there are a number of other these that I've reported on in the past. I've asked for a bigger contribution in my CE's report from staff in next month to give you an idea of who these people are and what they're working on. We've got some from libraries, we've got digital engagement for libraries, etc. Other community to people, other roles in the community. And I'd like for you to be familiar with that. My final point is an item that was left on the table from our last meeting. I'm talking on point 10 regarding the Bulls Community Centre to Matapihi. And you'll see there that myself and His Worship agreed there is no need to revoke an earlier resolution, and therefore the 2 recommendations that I had from my report in February are back on the table for your consideration, which recommendation 2 and 3 refers, Your Worship.
Look, I'll treat with these separately, and I will move recommendation 2, looking for a seconder to that, so it opens it up for any discussion.
Seconding.
Councillor Wilson seconding. I think there's been a reasonable amount of explanation, and we will take any questions around it. One of the things has been that council is engaged incredibly heavily at the moment in terms of the LTP. This has not dropped off the radar. It still sits there and needs to be dealt with. Any questions? All right, put to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Would somebody like to move 3? Councillor Wilson, are you
Happy to move, yes.
looking for second? Councillor Hero is seconding. You wish to speak to it?
No, Your Worship, I think it's pretty clear.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll put it to vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. I think that brings you to the end of your report.
Sorry, question.
Councillor.
Item 5, we sort of covered over that, the Building Consent Authority assessment report.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of items in there. Sean, I don't want to go into any detail, but I guess the question would be, are you confident that we have the resources available to deliver our requirements on time? And if those resources aren't available or aren't currently fully resourced, what actions have we got in place to address it?
Just a clarification, so you're talking about consenting timeframes?
Yes.
Oh,
Sorry, not the BCA assessment report, but I guess included in that it comes around consenting timeframes and the resources to deliver.
At the moment, we've put a notice out to say that we are no longer able to meet the timeframes as we would like. And our major subcontractor has said the same, and that notice still stands. We, from a resourcing perspective, we are starting now to build new roles as in anticipation of our LTP being adopted and the budget being adopted the way it is, and 4 positions to start on the 1st of July. That will ease the pressure. The biggest issue is building control officers, and that is a national problem. I received an email from another CEO this week that went to every CEO in the country that said, please help, because they're in a far worse position than us. And the response from other CEOs was, we wish we could help, but we're actually worse than you in some cases. So this is a national crisis, you could say, and we are doing the very best we can. We have vacancies out there. I think we should be confident that one will be filled moderately soon. And if that does progress, then we'll move to a cadet role as well. So we actually bring some new into that, because at the moment it's robbing Peter to pay Paul between councils.
Thank you for that. I just wonder about communication out to that network, like the building network, that are facing the consequences of not being able to meet those timeframes, and if they're well aware of the processes being put in place to address it, then it probably gives them some comfort as well. I'm not sure about what sort of communication we've sent out as council.
I wouldn't be able to provide any further information than it's already gone out, which is we're doing our very best to get more people until we get more people.
Yeah.
And I can't say in some cases that there are more roles available until the LTP and you have approved the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Formally, I can't say that, even though I recognise I'm in a formal situation now.
All right. Thank you.
I have had somebody approach me in the last day or so offering to be able to support with regard to one specialised area of this. Maybe we'll have a conversation offline.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, going back over those reports? Moving on to item 10. These council appointments to committees. First of all, could somebody move we receive the report? Please, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Carter, those in favour? Those against? I'll make a general comment first about people being on committees, and first of all, just to talk a little wee bit about the mayor's right. And the mayor can just appoint people to these positions. It's covered under local government rules. I believe that with these appointments, it's far better to do it at the council table rather than me doing that. And by the way, for the new councillors, for instance, the mayor can appoint a deputy mayor. They can appoint chairs of committees. They can put people onto committees, but equally, the council has the right to challenge that process. So the legislation goes round and round circles. It's a bit weird, to the stage where the mayor could appoint, for example, a deputy mayor, gets challenged by council, and the mayor could even reappoint the deputy mayor back into the role. Councillor Hero.
So, thank you. So when you say council, you mean the rest of the elected members are able to challenge
the mayor's decision effectively, and equally, that's a challenge that it completes the process. They can vote it, literally vote it down. But there's also nothing to stop the mayor putting the same person back in, and it goes on forever, as has happened with one of our councils. Not our council, for those online. However, are we happy if we move straight to the recommendations? And dealing with appointments, and we'll do 2A, looking for a councillor to be made a member of Creative New Zealand Assessment Committee. And an indication, councillor Rakawa, that you're interested in that role.
Yes.
She's passionate.
You can, by the way, you can move or second yourself. You can't do both.
I'm happy to move that councillor Rokawa be a member of the Creative New Zealand Assessment Committee.
And I'm happy to
Second that. Thank you, councillor Lambert seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. And I'll just duck back to the request from councillor Jill Duncan to become a member of the finance performance. Would somebody like to so move that happens?
Let's move that.
Thank you, councillor Hira moving, seconded councillor Panapa. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Sorry to put you out of sequence. Next one, 2B. Look.
Right.
You're jumping from 2A to 3 to 2B.
Yeah.
Me or
Yeah,
not to be?
Yeah, sorry, I just looked in there, I was one of both further down. Better deal with that while I remember. Go back to 2B, my apologies, councillors. Looking for a councillor to be appointed as the liaison councillor for the Bulls Community Committee, along with councillor Carter.
I'd like to move councillor Rakawa.
Seconded. Councillor Lambert moving, councillor Hira seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. 2C. This is the liaison councillor for the Turakina Community Committee, appointed for the first 18 months. Following that, councillor Panapa undertakes that role. Or if no appointment is made, councillor Panapa will fill this role from 1st of May. Are you happy, by the way, for that to continue? So is anybody wanting to make a further appointment, or we'll leave it standing with councillor Panapa?
I'm not sure how many Turakina community committees will happen between now and the 1st of May. It could be 0.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit academic, doesn't it? Okay, we'll leave that one stand. I don't think it needs addressing. 2D we'll move to.
Would you, excuse me, Worship, would 2C therefore be that no councillor be appointed, or is it?
Well, it's a little bit academic. No councillor is appointed. He carries on as such anyway.
Yes, but that means that 2C would therefore be no motion, and it will be
Result.
no result. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your preference?
Which would you prefer, George? You drew the document.
No, I did.
Sorry.
There is a Turakina Community Committee meeting on the 1st of April.
Okay. So you'd rather we dealt with it?
Yes.
Right. Would somebody like to move? Thank you, councillor Rakawa. What are you moving?
Maybe that councillor Panapa stays in that role, continues on as yeah.
Right. Seconded by councillor Carter. Those in favour?
It might be easier to say that councillor Panapa fills this role from 1 April 2021.
Yeah. So we just wipe from be appointed full stop. Full stop and everything else gets dropped.
No.
You've got to have liaison councillor.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Fills the role of Turakina Community Committee liaison. Oh, yeah, that. Yeah. From 1 May. From 1 April, sorry. Yes. So, Councillor Rakawa, And Carter,
Councillor Rokawa moved and Councillor Carter seconded.
happy with that?
Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. D, that councillor be appointed a member of the Santok Reserve Management Committee.
I'd like to move that councillor Carter be appointed.
Would you be happy with that, councillor Carter? Looking for a seconder. Seconder, councillor Rokawa. Any further discussion? Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. E, looking for a councillor to be appointed a member of the Ratana Community Board.
I'd like to nominate councillor Panapa.
Yep. Does that all work? That councillor Panapa be appointed a member of the Ratana Community Board? Yes, in other words, it means you continue, don't you? Looking for a seconder to that? Is it possible to get a seconder to that?
That's the question.
Question.
Councillor Carter is just asking about whether there's conflict of interest because of the committees that I'm on in Rātua.
What sort of conflict of interest do you see?
Well, it's an interesting one. You know, the Communal Board of Trustees is the only committee that I'm a part of in the community, but I'd be willing to step down from that committee if that was an issue.
I'm not sure that where I see the issue, to be honest. I don't see it as a conflict unless there's something that I'm totally unaware of. There's no pecuniary interest of any nature, is it?
And I believe
no member of your family has any financial involvement.
I believe when Soraya was a councillor, she was a member of both as well. So
I don't see. Thank you for bringing it to the attention of the council, but I don't see that there is an issue.
I'm happy to second.
Now, Councillor Belcher seconded. Any discussion? What is the vote? Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. I won't do three again. That takes us to the end of that. Now we move on to speed limits bylaw review, I think. Yes, so we have had an update and on the Bulls.
The first water pipe.
Thank you.
I've
you
just had a
update us?
call from Mr Van Bussel and they have got the pipe fixed. The reservoir has dropped to 35, but they're comfortable not having to do any further restrictions, only keeping a conserved water in place until tomorrow morning. Okay, but at least it's fixed.
By the way, I did get a text message from one of my previous tuia that I keep in touch with, who basically said, "Oh, way to go, Awa," congratulating on the presentation. So it is quite a network, which is awesome. Right, moving on to 10.2, speed limit bylaw review. Welcome to the table, George Forster, the policy advisor. George, would you like to take us through this?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. So just for a bit of background for those who weren't at the Policy and Planning Committee meeting on this, the recommendation was to go to Council to adopt the proposed bylaw with the northern and southern ends of Hunterville, and also the issue raised by the Taihape Community Board in the southern end of Taihape. NZTA have since come back to us and firmed their position that that's outside of our jurisdiction, being on the state highway, so we can't have the authority to essentially go and change those, even if we'd like to. So those have been removed from what's in there. They've been taken out completely. So what's in there would be that there are no changes. So we're actually now proposing that we don't go out for consultation on this. There's a couple of reasons for that. This was adopted in 2009, and since then there's been a number of amendments made. So the community's had an issue, it's been brought to the attention of staff, then through council, we've consulted, we've amended and made the changes. So the bylaw progressively over the last 12 years has essentially remained up to date with community concerns and issues and addressed those. And the second reason for that is also the Waka Kotahi NZTA are going to do some regional work on speed limits. At the moment, it's looking like at the end of the year, from what the roading teams had the discussion with me about. So we could potentially go and review this now, and then in 12 months' time, we might have to do it again anyway. And like what I've said, there isn't any other identified issues from the community that have said we'd need to do something that falls within inside our jurisdiction in terms of boundaries. So I'm happy to take any further questions, especially around clarification for that.
Questions, Councillor Ash.
Yeah, I've had, through you, Mr. Chair, I've had a couple of issues that have been raised with me. One of them by multiple people, and that is the speed limit through Mangaweka. So is that council, that 70k area, a lot of the community there is saying that with the kids having to cross the road to get to the school, etc., that really it should be a 50k area. So a number of the community there have raised that. You've got the public toilets right there, and cars are coming off that 70k area to the public toilets and screaming in there. I think that was also raised at the meeting the other day as well. That the mayor was at. And the other one that's been raised with me is the 20k's speed limit in the likes of Dudding campground and Kuiriata campground. People considering that 20k speed limit in those areas where kids could be staying, etc., is too high.
So generally, the first one would be under the jurisdiction of Waka Kotahi rather than ourselves.
So what would be the process if the community wanted to push that?
So probably the easiest way would be through actually through the LTP as a concern would be one way of doing it. Saying this is changes that they would like to see council consider. Probably easier to bundle all these requests up is my thinking. Councillor Hero.
So just taking on that advice, if we've just been, if we've already been told that because Mangaweka is on State Highway 1, will that, by going through our LTP process?
I was thinking of Duddings Lake and side roads off State Highway 1 and Koitiata campground issues, not the speed limit through. So we could you could respond to the speed limit issue with people going through Mangaweka to say it's not our jurisdiction, and we'd have to seek the changes advocated within the report for that one. Do you wish to make comments?
No, but Councillor Wilson.
I was just looking to move the receipt of the report.
Yeah. Look, Councillor Wilson, you're happy to move the receipt of the
report? Yes.
Looking for a seconder to it. Councillor Dalgety seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. The next one is the adoption of proposed speed limit bylaw be postponed. Councillor Wilson moving. Councillor Dalgety seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. The next one is that council recommend to staff to work with Waka Kotahi NZTA and raise the 3 community speed limit change requests. Now, Councillor Ash, you may wish.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Your Worship. Who carried and moved that last one?
Councillor Wilson moved. Councillor Dalgety seconded. Same. It's probably easier to type it rather than cut and paste.
It is speed, yes.
It's me.
Lightning McQueen, yeah.
Probably different. The next one is Councillor Ash, if you're concerned about the speed limit through Mangaweka, you may wish to add it to that mix. Councillor, while you're thinking, Councillor Belsham.
Yeah, The other three requests have gone through the respective community committees, and I think it would be advisable that if there is an indication it doesn't just come from a councillor, that it actually goes through the process of the respective community committee that Mangaweka Township falls under, which I presume would be the Taipi Community Board. Is that correct? Do they have their own community committee?
No, they don't.
No, so I would expect that it should go to the Taipi Community Board to give advice before it gets put into a staff action.
Just on that, Your Worship, if I may, regarding that point 3, the fact that it says raise the 3, work with NZTA Waka Kotahi and raise the 3 limited requests, perhaps that's limiting us, and perhaps it should be words to raise, to work with them to raise community speed requests or something, speed change requests, rather than there's that limiting of that word 3.
Yeah. Are you wishing to move that? It's not as an amendment because there's an emotion on the floor.
No, just looking to change the wording and then I'm happy to move it.
I wonder if the only wording change is and raise community speed limit change requests.
Yeah.
So the word the
3.
three.
That 3 should go. Yep.
Are you wishing to so move that?
I'm happy to move that, yes.
Councillor Hero, are you seconding that? All right, well, Roll, do you wish to speak to it?
I think it's fairly self-explanatory.
Questions or speakers? Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just
Councillor
interested
Ash, Councillor Dalgety.
in the process, in terms of the Hunterville one has come through our community committee. However, anyone that I've spoken to about it doesn't seem to be that keen on it. So, yeah, I'm just interested in that process.
This was an issue that past councillor Dean McManaway raised and said people don't want, they want to see traffic moving. However,
So do those people need to get in touch with their community committee? And thank you. Okay.
remember, this would go out to consultation regardless. There's a process. So it's not a decision process here. There's a process of consultation that will flow on from this.
Thank you.
Councillor Ash, Councillor Hero, Councillor Ash.
Yeah, just wondering if we need to have an action point in there to contact the Taihape Community Board. Read Mangaweka.
I think that might be where Councillor Hero is going. Councillor Hero.
Yeah, so actually I was, thank you. What I thought was maybe it needs to be the other way around, because when the issue came through, so the Taihape Community Board, there was actually a delegation of people that came through and brought that taki through. So perhaps people that want to bring it through, at least it gets onto the table if you put it in as a agenda item into the Taihape Community Board meeting, as opposed for us to go to whoever that is. I don't know, you know what I mean? Because usually what happens is that the people will come in with their issues as opposed to us going to somebody with an issue.
Yeah, I think, are you happy if staff take on board your comments to progress? Is that how you see it?
Yes, I would see the undertaking that we can note in the minutes that does say that we will look at contacting the Taihape Community Board and go through the request through them.
Thank you. That brings us to an end of 10.2, moving through 10.3, Project Management Office Report. Starting on page something or other. We welcome the Senior Project Manager, Jessica, to the table. Jess, do you want to take us through this, please?
Yep, tēnā koutou. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to take any questions. I've got a few comments to make on some of the projects. First thing I wanted to touch on is that I've proposed changes to TMO reporting. We floated them in the last few meetings, really, and it's been an evolutionary process. But I am keen for feedback on the list of 8 projects that I intend to report on going forward. Just a reminder that these are assessed against a project initiation form and matrix. And the intention is to report on our most complex projects here. So they won't always be 10, they'll be 8 for now, they could be 15 next year. But the idea is that, you know, a set 10 is limiting. We want to report on projects where they require this level of governance. Are there any comments, or I'll move on to project specific?
Would somebody like to have the reports be received? Councillor Hero moving, Councillor Carter seconding. Those in favour, aye. Those against, carried. Thank you.
On the Mangaweka Bridge replacement, I've put the total construction cost in there of 7.9 million. The full project cost is 10 million and we are paying half of it. So that's why our budget is 5. It's not a total cost of 7.9 and we're paying 5. The 7.9 is construction only. Other than that, the project's proceeding as planned.
So when you say we are paying half, we're paying half of a half share. So there's the far rate and there's the split between 2 councils. How do you explain that one?
So I'm not sure how. Yeah,
I can do that. Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Your Worship. That's so the split includes the far rate. So 63% of that's paid by Waka.
Does everybody understand that? Okay, I see some shakes around the room. So if you take the total project cost, and just to simplify it, if this bridge costs $10 million to build, it is that first of all is split between the 2 councils. And for simplicity's sake, take that figure and you split it and say it's 5 million for Manawatu District Council and 5 million for us. Of our share, we get a funding assistance rate from Waka Kotahi of 63 cents in the dollar. So it's half of a half, or a bit more than half of a half. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no questions on Martin Taball's wastewater centralisation, yeah.
I'm just still trying to get a sense of the type of property we're looking to purchase here. I'm aware that Killingmoon, a dairy farm adjacent to State Highway.
Can we just be careful about naming individual properties if you're going to go into the circumstances?
And
it might be
aware
safe
that a property which I would have thought, albeit adjacent to the main road, would have been similar to something that we would have been looking for. So I'm just wondering, can we get a better sense of what we're looking here? Because it seems to me, and I'm corrected if I'm wrong, that it's this purchase of the land that's holding up this process. I guess that's the first question.
It's not entirely, is it? I can answer that. It's not really a project, it's a whole program of works, and it's incredibly complex. So the work that Anna and Gabriella are doing at the moment is really pulling that all together into something that we can adequately explain and table with you. In terms of the different components of the project, you're right, the purchase of land is a significant one. With Anna's direction, we are having specialists prepare basically a summary of the type of land that we're going to need and a potential size of land that we're going to need, so that we can engage a buyer's advocate to go and source that land for us. It's not working at the moment to wait for land to come up and then scramble around to try and assess if it's the right type, if it's viable. But the reason that it is a program versus a project is all of these things are happening at once. So a consenting strategy is being started at the same time as we're at detailed design of the transfer pipeline. So it is all interrelated. It's all very complex. We have 2 different reports to come next month that will hopefully give you more clarity on the project. So one is a draft of a consenting strategy, And the other one is a sort of comprehensive 2-page document that spells out what the stages are, where we're at within each one, or the individual projects where we're at within each one, and what you can expect from us in the next few months. It is a really challenging program of works, and we are still in the forming and the initiation of it, while some of the activities have been running for a long time.
Without going into details, councillor, about the particular property, it may well be that property consideration has come up before. Just bear in mind that all sorts of other factors, like the ability of the soil to be able to handle water and soil conditions and prevailing wind, all of those things come into these sorts of mixes.
So my worry is that we are trying to find a piece of land that is utopia.
Yeah, I'll go to the chief executive and then I'll go to councillor Ash. Councillor,
Well, I'm actually going to divert to Arno, because Arno had a very good explanation, because I asked the same question this week in terms of how we're doing the reverse of what we've done in the past, declaring exactly what we need.
Yes. So as a quick summary, what happened is we were waiting for land to become available for sale, and then we will get an expert to go with us with the estate agent. We'll have a look around. They'll have a quick look at the soil conditions, and then we'll make a call if it's big enough, if the soil conditions are correct, if the water table is correct, all those kind of things. What we found though is the estate agents keep asking us, what are you looking for? And we keep saying, we don't know. We'll come have a look at the piece of land and we'll tell you. But then we realize that if we turn this whole thing around, get these experts to have a look at what is it that we need, and then we'll have a list of criteria. So we want it to be close to the plant. We want it to be far enough so there's no issue with odor and a couple of other things. They can then produce a document that will identify pieces of land that could work for us. And that's what Jess was talking about. We will hand that over to somebody that will actively go and pursue this.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Ash.
And just a very, very quick question, Jess, through you, Mr. Chair. The 20 million ticket that we've got there, is that rough? Is that what we're expecting, or is that just something? Can we assume that's fairly close to the?
That is approximate to what we're putting into the long-term plan for consultation.
It wasn't the last long-term plan.
Great, awesome. I was a bit worried there. I'm going to be spilling confidential things, but no. So that is a figure. We expect it to land somewhere between 24 and 27 million. And please do keep in mind that this program of work is still forming. There was 4.5 million in the current annual plan, and I have not included that figure there. I think I could have gone for about 3 days trying to split hairs over the budgets and this, but actually I'd rather come back to you next month with something a bit more concrete.
Thank you. Moving along, I think.
Next one is the Lake Waipu improvement and Ratana wastewater treatment project. It's been a challenging one over the last month. Are there any questions on the report?
No, moving on.
Any questions on Tutainui Rural Water Supply Scheme?
So some of the councillors were charged with entering into a discussion. Is there any early feedback?
Yes, well, as we spoke to Jess, we have had that extension of another 2 months for this thing, so we've really got to crack on if we want to. It goes back to the Three Waters thing, that absolute total ignorance of the changes afoot with the Three Waters, and it's heart's a little bit back to the Hunterville Water Scheme, but it's almost it'd be somewhat irresponsible of us as a council if we don't start telling people there actually is going to be change. Like, there's so much people that have no idea, and that's part of the problem there. Is we propose having a meeting at, say, the Tutanui Hall and encouraging the local farmers to get along and explain the water scheme, what's proposed, and explain that the changes that are coming to the water system, everything, also they're a lot more informed, and then hopefully get a lot more buy-in to the project.
Councillor Ash.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Now, if Councillor Lambert and are doing all of that and we get engagement, then this question's absolutely irrelevant. But if the engagement doesn't come through and we don't get that buy-in from the locals, what does that look like for the project then? Does it just fall over, we save ourselves money, we give the money back that we've received for it, is that right? And we just don't go ahead with it, or where does it leave us if there's just no buy-in?
We would do a project closure essentially, and put it forward that it would be closed. We haven't received any funding yet under our funding deed. It's one where we do the work and then claim. So there's nothing to give back, but we'd essentially be walking out of our deed of funding with the ministry.
Yeah, could I just point of clarification and correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't save us any money though. You said we save money.
Some of the cost for it will be funded by council, so it will be saving us money if we don't go ahead with it.
Well, I think there's a lot more conversation to be had about that as to, you know, the funding mechanisms going forward. I don't think that necessarily by dropping this project do we save money. I think that would be, would be, yeah, not quite correct would be my, I'm seeking clarification on that.
Yeah, just some comments from the chair, and I stand to be corrected from either wings, if you like. First of all, in terms of, we're talking, there's some various different parties within this wider mix. There is the Hunterville Rural Water Scheme. There is the Hunterville Urban Supply, which currently comes out of the Rural Water Scheme. And there's a possibility of extension of a rural network of water. So first of all, just to point out in terms of the changes coming from a regulatory background, the Hunterville Rural Water Scheme will inevitably be caught up in the regulatory changes. And people will say it's not a potable supply, but it will be caught up with a series of changes because of its, shall I say, its use within the wider community. The Hunterville community aspect of this, so we still have to wait for further information around the bore that was put down, the suitability of that to become Hunterville Urban Supply, so that's another factor. And if it was to become Hunterville Urban Supply, then there is a relationship between the council, because effectively we guarantee to take a third of the water, as you're well aware, sitting on that scheme, councillor. So we would have to on-sell that water to someone else. So I guess it's what a fine web we've woven is. You know, there's all sorts of interrelationships within this. Would you like, is there anything dropped off that? Maria,
I think
from
it's
your point of view?
I'd probably highlight what you've already said, Your Worship, in that we don't know where rural water schemes fit. In one breath they say potable water, on the other they say it's 2 or more premises connected to the same supply. That makes a reticulation network. But there is still a lot to go before we have clarity on how rural water schemes are. I think you're absolutely right, though, if I may say so, Your Worship, that we do need to engage with them clearly about what the reform looks like and the questions that still need to be understood.
The Southland schemes, which are very similar to ours, have been told that they will be caught up in this. End of story. Councillor Ash, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Hero, Councillor Ash.
So just for clarification at the top there, it says proposed to be removed from this report until April 2021 and reported when necessary. So will we be kept in the loop until we know what happens with the work that Councillor Lambert's doing, etc.? So it won't fall off this.
It'll fall into miscellaneous.
Okay.
Just page whatever.
Yeah, page, a few pages on, because it doesn't meet the criteria for one of the more significant projects. It should be reported to council, but there is interest in it, and it'll be going into miscellaneous.
Councillor Dalgety.
Do you sense there's some reputational risk around the farmers not engaging and not getting informed, the scheme getting dropped, and then we'll get the blame for for them having complications with their water?
Yeah, potentially you're right. There are one or two, and one I can think of quite heavily, who is requesting that we continue to work on this. They are struggling to find good water for their farm. But some of the people that were originally interested have also said we no longer see a need for it for us. And whatever happens, it's driven by, community aspirations, but it's also driven around the mechanics of where you can supply water to under cost efficiency. So it is a very tricky.
So further than that, and that's part of the complication because people don't know if they're being or out.
Yeah. Councillor Hero, and then I'll go back to Councillor Ash. Councillor Hero.
So just to comment into that whole space around the three waters, and I totally get it that it's council asset is what they're talking about, but in the Hui's that I've been part of, the reality is that rural people that are on, so you're talking about the rural, so the Hunterville Rural Water Scheme, this will affect those, there are a number of, I would have thought I'm just thinking in a marae space that where we sit, as much as it's not a council, it's got nothing to do with the council at all. They do sit under that, will sit under that umbrella, and the fact that they are part of a multi group users. So I'd say how I understand it is that that's how, and that's not just the marae that are rural, but a number of rural people that are sitting on water schemes of them, that have just been set up in communities that are going to be affected by that. They're not even hooked into, council assets at all, but they are going to be affected, and so we still have to be able to put that information out to them as well.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely correct. Just because it's a council scheme or not a council scheme, there's no differential in why that would be treated. Councillor Ash.
Just wondering if it would be appropriate here to actually ask, because the nuances of all of our water systems throughout the district are huge to understand, whether or not it's appropriate to actually ask if we can have a workshop for elected members to fully understand each of our systems that we've got, given the three waters that we've got coming up. I'd be very interested in having a more in-depth workshop on what we've currently got, what the opportunities are and what the challenges are for our district.
That will absolutely become part of the base information to the decision around what you want to do. So you've got to elect to opt in, or sorry, no, nowadays they've changed it. You've got to elect to opt out rather than in. And you'll be charged with making a decision on that, and you need all of the information sitting on the table. So not only do you need the information of the offer for the future, but you've got to know what you're up for if you keep it, retain it. So yeah, all that information must happen. Can we move on? Any further questions? Thank you.
Te Marapihi Bulls, you have a tabled paper with you now regarding the platform lift and stage access. Swap out with Adina for a moment.
Just while Adina's sitting down, Your Worship, if I just, this is for information paper and for discussion. This is not seeking a decision from elected members, and we're doing so just because of the high-profile nature of Te Marapihi and the work, and just to highlight the work that Adina's been doing.
We've been looking at the various options for a front access to the stage in Te Matapihi. So that includes accessibility access in form of a platform lift, which was requested by the building inspector office and also by lots of users actually, including the schools and other events that are being held in the hall. And the option that we have chosen is a option that is actually not mobile, as the report says, but it is a very inclusive option to basically have the same path that someone would walk up the stairs, also go up the stairs, and it will blend really nicely into the hall because it can be adapted to suit the colors and the wooden look of the floor. So I was quite keen to show you a little clip because it is quite impressive to just see the technology behind it. And the music in the background is not relevant, so it's just music.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, gets even better, Andy. Oh, sorry.
well, wait, there's more.
So we will not have that little thing that goes up there because the whole stage is not cordoned off, so we don't need it. But basically the rest of it, so it's only a very minor installation on the stage front, and then it is such a very minimalistic, and it doesn't actually take away too much space, but it will be definitely fixed. It's
Because the option 2 looked like the invasion of the Daleks.
Yes. The downside really of mobile lifts is that because of their safety aspect, they need to obviously have all sorts of safety things around them and different flaps going up and down and all that. So it's such a lovely design, and it makes it just feel really inclusive, I think. This is what I got so excited about. So yeah, if you have any feedback on the report that you just saw obviously today, then I'm happy to take any questions and any comments.
Councillor Hira, Councillor Hira first. Councillor Dawson second.
I'd be interested to know what the cost of something like that would be.
So this system, when you compare it to a lift and stairs, is about 10 grand more. And I say that with a disclaimer of that when you have the mobile options, you have 2 large items that you will need to store, and I cannot put a price on that at the moment, but I cannot see it actually being stored internally because they are not like that lift in the second option. This doesn't collapse. You can't fold it up or anything like it. So there's definitely storage requirements. And generally speaking, these lifts, they're not cheap because of the safety aspects of them. So they have to be very, very detailed engineering. Does that make sense?
So, thank you for that answer, but that didn't actually answer my question. Can you, so, you know, is it a ballpark 50,000, 20,000, 100,000? Or 200,000? I'm just.
We haven't concluded a negotiation, so we're doing that at the moment. But it's a budget that's covered within the project.
Sorry, just another subsequent question, because we're talking about this. I see that there is another thing that had come through around Hunterville and their hall. So potentially, I'm just putting that there. They're looking, though, the question had got put up about potentially them looking at something for the entrance way, I understand it, into that Hunterville hall. So
you sound that you're now suggesting that we buy 2.
I'm just saying because it's there.
Just I don't want to be cute, but we are in public forum and I don't want to jeopardise any potential negotiation with a supplier. That's why I'm reluctant to give a number in this forum.
Councillor Belsham, I think, did you have a question?
Oh, it was just, you were asking for feedback. I think something that blends in with the style of the hall makes perfect sense. It's one thing that stood out for the temporary stage that was there. It looks absolutely diabolical, and there was a comment that everyone, when I've been in the hall, said, "What's happening there? What, you know, is there something temporary or permanent, or what's happening?" So yeah, that looks fantastic.
Right, can we push on? Have I missed anybody? Sorry, Councillor Grakawa.
Just to say that the option 2, having a second person wind up a wheelchair, somebody who's in a wheelchair, is there any health and safety issues, you know, along with that? ACC issues maybe?
No, it's not like a free fall wind up. So if you wind up, A is reduced as in how much strength you need.
Yes.
And there's also obviously safety measures that if you would let go, it wouldn't just crash down. So that's why, yeah, there's not actually many options out in the market. And they're quite specific about safety is obviously one of the biggest things. So it shouldn't just accidentally stop. It shouldn't make you fall off or whatever. So they're all safe, I would say. Yeah, but it's definitely, I think that the fact that you have a second person involved makes the person that is needing the lift up probably not feel that great either, if they could actually be doing it themselves in a way.
Thank you.
We haven't got the grinders from the America's Cup. Look, I think we'll move on. I'm hoping to get through the next one with regard to Martin before Councillor Belsham takes over.
Good. Okay. Any questions on the Martin Civic Centre redevelopment? Okay. Taiape Memorial Park Amenities Building. I do have an additional matter to raise. It's just come up yesterday or today. So we have looked into seeking external funding to support the project. We received a quote back from, is it the Gillian Group? The Giblin Group, in order to prepare a feasibility study and a funding application on our behalf. We talked about the actual cost here. So we wanted to seek some feedback. The cost of engaging them to do that work for us is about $36,000. So we've really got 3 options there. We can go ahead and pay that and take the chances that we could get between $250,000 and $500,000 of funding. We could, we could leave it and self-fund, or we could see if there's a way that we can apply without that external help. Though I understand that it is strongly recommended to have an external group to apply for funding for you.
Can I speak to this one just before I head away? I've long been an advocate of looking for the expertise that we have struggled to, for instance, in the Bull Centre, one of the struggles we had, the local fundraising, Joe Blogg downtown, etc., and the local trades room was brilliant. But the national raised fundraising, we weren't quite as great. And it's just we don't have those specific skills. And we have a number of buildings that we're going to inevitably do, whether it's the Taiape Town Hall or Martin, etc. They will be needing to prove their case. And I think it's absolutely, I'd support that we get engaged with the Giblin Group. Take feedback from questions. Go around the room this way. Have you got your fingers loaded?
Yes, I am. Just so we have a recommendation coming out of this sitting here. No, this is just a discussion at this point.
You can make a recommendation, of course.
I actually would like to make a recommendation, and my recommendation is that we take up the offer from Giblin Group, and I agree with His Worship's comments, and also particularly for newer councillors sitting around the table, this conversation has been had in some depth at previous council table in the last triennium. And the reasons for, I think His Worship has explained. So I think that we need to take up the professional services that are on offer, as I don't believe that we have the skill set immediately available to us within our own organisation to produce the results that we desire. So I would like to see that we move to take up the offer.
Have we seconded to that? Councillor Hera seconded. Can we get a motion on the floor while that is being prepared? Are you ready to start to make them?
I shall come to the.
Thank you.
Move the name pages.
Don't let the rudder go yet.
Yeah, sorry to drop into that one, Nigel, halfway through you. Change over.
Well, we haven't voted on it yet.
Yeah, but do you think I need to stay and make sure that gets across the line?
As soon as we go, we're going to have to go from there. Yep. 3 o'clock, yeah, 3 o'clock.
Great idea.
We can break at 3 o'clock and everyone.
Finish that.
One last thing to that. We do have one of the staff in the PMO who does have experience in preparing these applications of our community groups in the district. Before we vote, I just wanted to make sure that was done. So there's a feasibility study for $26,620 plus disbursements in GST, and then the application on top of that is $10,505 plus just in disbursements.
So you're moving?
I'm moving that as has been formulated up there and written, yes.
I will second it. You wish to speak to it?
Yes, I am. Just going to re-endorse what I said earlier on before. Now, whilst this is a sum of money, and we've just heard from our project manager saying that potentially there's a skill set within that office, I would suggest that with the amount of work that we've got on our tables for our project management team, that would be perhaps not the best utilisation of our time. I would be reading into that we've got a better use to take this opportunity and to focus clearly on what are going to be a significant amount of fundraising activities that we need to take on board. So just speaking for the motion.
One speaker for the motion, Councillor Hero, you had your hand up.
Oh, I wanted to take up all the what's just been said to support what you've talked about, and also what Councillor Wilson has talked about. And I would have thought that, given that the Giblin Group has been around the table in the last 20 months since I've been on board anyway, it makes total sense in my head that we're getting the professionals in to do that.
I'm going to speak to the motion, which I think it's not only about skill set, it's about personal contact. It's knowing who to speak to within these sectors. There are all sorts of groups that we don't even begin to understand that exist. And for the Giblin Group to have a very, very strong track record in being able to raise substantial sums of money, and a lot of that is about literally knowing the person on the end of the phone. So I'll support it. We've now had 3 speakers in favour. Are there any speakers against the motion? Your worship, right?
No, your worship, I think it's been said.
Ash, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Sorry, I've just got a question because the motion's just been changed and the figures have been taken out. So,
Sorry, Your Worship, yes, I would need to go back to that. I believe that the figures shouldn't be there. They are commercially sensitive and therefore should not be represented in the recommendation.
I agree.
Okay, that's totally fair. The figure won't change.
So just to check that you and
something that ideally
I'm
should have
comfortable
been,
with that.
ideally it should have been dealt with in committee, to be honest, in terms of a figure. If you like, I'm sure that Councillor Belsham taking over will council if you want it recorded in committee as a separate item, so it's on record, fine, but I don't see the need. Right, I'll put it to the vote. For those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. We'll now adjourn for those of you that wish to take a cup of tea, and my apology that I'm not here for the rest of the meeting, but certainly very much on council business.
continue with
Numerical.
users report. So wherever we were up to there, Jess, if you'd like to carry on, thank you.
Thank you. So up to the Martin Memorial Hall. I don't see any raised eyebrows, which is wonderful. We have got some scope changes coming. We will have a report for the April 2021 meeting as a request for additional funding should we like those activities to be undertaken. The hall will also be made good for Anzac Day celebrations and then construction to be finished afterwards.
Okay, so questions on the Martin Memorial Hall? Councillor Dalgety.
I'm no expert at this, but I'm reading this, reinstate previous signage at the cost of 20,000. Just seemed expensive to me.
It's not the previous signage.
Okay.
It's it should say new signage to be instated.
Right.
And there is an agenda item dealing with the signage coming up.
There sure is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just had a question in regards with this, and it's been a question from within the community in regards with a budgeted figure that was in there for repainting the interior of the hall. Has that been included in this work, or is that to be done outside of the scope?
We have initiated another project through the long-term plan to do some additional work to the Memorial Hall. Off the top of my head, I don't know if the painting is in this one or the next one. I believe it's in the next project that starts after 1st of July.
Okay.
Just through you saying we did have a budget of 51,000 and that has been moved in as part of this project.
So that work will
So
be done under this?
The funding was included. The painting was for the toilet areas, so it wasn't for the whole interior of the hall.
Right, okay. Okay, there was a question that was raised and yeah, they thought the interior of the hall was getting done. So it was only for the painting of the toilets. Okay. Right.
We may need to double check that. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Um,
okay,
Can
so,
we leave that on the table?
yeah,
too?
if that could be clarified,
Yeah.
please.
Can we just make sure we do that correctly?
And that was signalled prior, that budget was signalled prior to any work starting on this project.
I have a different view, so that's why, sorry.
Right.
So the undertaking is to confirm the scope of interior painting within the $51,000 council contribution to the project. They're going, can I now, again, I'll talk about it.
So that's not confused with the 51,000 here resolution towards the fire safety system.
So I think there's confusion in there as well. Yeah, that's.
I can clarify that if you like. Yeah, so the $500,000 that we got from the Provincial Development Unit had to be shovel ready, so no consents could be required. We then learned that we would have to have consent for the fire safety system upgrade, so we essentially got the funding from the PDU to cover 51,000 painting, and then the fire safety system upgrade to be paid for by us. So we then are also not in a position to confirm final cost and final scope of the interior painting because there's been quite a significant change to come in, which is a full jib ceiling has to be installed. You know, we're replacing the roof at the moment. The ceiling that has been there previously we found is no longer suitable and has to be replaced. We're waiting on a final cost for that before we can come back and say, actually, look, these items were in scope and we're proposing to take this out. Or whatever else we may ask for, or additional funding.
Okay, so there's a few points there to clarify. I see this was to be removed and put under miscellaneous. Can it stay there until that's clarified? Is that possible? Because
sure.
it is an area of interest within the community. Yeah. Thank you. Further questions? I think Councillor Rolkawa had your hand up.
Oh, I did. Through you, Mr. Chair. the scaffolding that's around there at the moment, is that for the roof on the outside? And is it, you know, keep thinking health and safety, you know, is it appropriate as it is? It doesn't need the stuff around the outside, so no one falls down or goes in. And is there signage around there for signage? I'm saying down the bottom, you know, danger, keep out sort of stuff. I didn't see any. I'm just, maybe it's somewhere.
The signage I'd have to check on. The scaffolding is done to acceptable standards, as ticketed, the yellow sticker and everything else. But I will ask our contractors what they're doing at the end of the day to make sure no one accesses the scaffolding.
Councillor Ash, did you have your hand up?
I did. Just wondering, the car park lighting, etc., at the rear of the hall, 30,000. So is that over and above the 596? Was that not in the original? So that's over and above that.
Scope.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
All right, moving on. The remediation of the historic landfill on Putarino Road. I'm absolutely delighted to say that about 1 o'clock today, we received our resource consent for that work.
Yes.
Yeah, it has been long awaited, and the contractor is starting on Monday, if not tomorrow. So Ngāti Hawatu has been advised, and I'll talk to Ngāti Apa after this, but yeah, we're finally full steam ahead. Not only did Horizons approve our resource consent, they also approved our winter works permit control plan, so we're good. We'll be able to start very soon.
Fantastic.
Yes, very happy. Any comments on that? There's a short update about subdivisions. There are no questions on that. There are 2 miscellaneous items. So the Taihape Memorial Park Grandstand, the seismic assessment, we've had a verbal update on it and waiting on the final report. That'll come probably May 2021. And then the Taihape Memorial Park tennis courts.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a couple of questions.
Mine's just, I should have asked this at the start, but your coloured arrow system, which is brilliant, by the way, when you change the arrows, is that done on a regular basis, or do you wait till like the stage is finished and they're changed, or is it done, do you have a pattern to changing them? Or?
We evaluate every month.
So it's a monthly thing?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
And Councillor Carter.
Being miscellaneous, no doubt, the Bulls Reservoir, how's the construction of that coming along?
Very good. It will be finished end of April, and then they'll move on to, well, provided that today's, rising main burst didn't cause any adverse effects, which we don't expect it did. So the reservoir is due to be completed at the end of April, and then planning for the new rising main and new pump station begins or is underway.
So that includes the pump house and everything else that'll be in operation, just finish the reservoir itself.
Just the reservoir, yeah. The pump station and the rising main, I believe, I don't know more, we've got at least another year, if not 2, before those things are done. Just very much a staged project.
Thank you.
I was just going to clarify the Hereford Heights in the item 12, page 70. The contract that's been awarded, I presume, is for the road intersection. Just to add to that, the Mayor and I had met with the schools to talk about their safety plan, not only around the work, but more broadly. And staff will develop our own review from a roading perspective on that Brendan's line, speed and safety, acknowledging the work will go ahead as part of this intersection improvement, but more broadly for the safety of students. Yes. And that includes in our long-term plan, we budgeted for a footpath on the southern side of the bridge.
Right. Yeah, that's something that certainly was raised with me at the long-term plan discussions within Martin around footpath access on the left-hand side. Yes. Where, in general, that's where the students utilise that piece of road. Yes. Yeah. So that's fantastic. All right. Any further questions? There being none, could I have someone move the recommendation that we receive? Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Lambert. All those in favour?
Right.
Against, carried. Now, recommendation 2 that sits there, I don't think there was any discussion in regards for that. What do we know about that?
I'm happy to move it to open the discussion.
Discussion, yeah, okay. Moved Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Hedrow. Okay. And is there anything in the report that talks about the extension there? Because I don't know, there's no information that I'm aware of.
If I may, it could be that picture that was brought to us this morning, and it might be building 11.
Yeah, but I'll just, if I can just clarify, Chair, as the mover, council investigate the scope of the Taipi's amenity building project to include investigation of storage for sports complex. So I guess for sports groups, we're in a design phase now, so it would make perfect sense to include that in part of the scope as we're still scoping the original build.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So this was in the report on the Taihape Memorial Park Amenities Building. It's been raised with the PMO to look at storage. I understand that the previous discussion was that storage was intended to be included, and then it was taken out, and there was discussion that storage such as a shipping container or perhaps in the grandstand would be provided not within the Taihape Amenities Building. And a couple of weeks ago at a community meeting, it was reintroduced, and there was support, I think, from the community and elected members for having storage within that building. So what that resolution asks is whether the PMO is being resolved that we will investigate that, or if we will continue expecting it to be outside of that building.
Thank you. So this recommendation asks for the scope to be changed to investigate that. And will that come back to this, to council for a recommendation? Right, okay. Would you like to speak to your?
No, just to say that I'm happy that this is an investigation only, which a report would come back. So I'm happy with that, as it's clearly stated it's an investigation.
Right. Any further speakers? Okay, there being none, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
So
Can you just confirm who moved and seconded?
so we're on 10.3, recommendation 2 around Taihape Amenities Block.
Yes.
Yep. Do you want us to undo the count vote just equal to Ends it. No, you're going too fast.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, this one here is what we just voted on. Under after groups.
Okay. They would have written down
Yep. Who was the second?
And Councillor Lambert.
Councillor Lambert, second.
So this given group 1 is that's new recommendation. I think that's changed. So this comes through. Carol, can you keep an eye on what we're doing? Yes. And then now if we scroll down a bit further, into 10.4, down here is it confirm the scope of interior painting as an undertaking that sits back up. An undertaking to 10.3.
This is actually just sit there, isn't it?
Now we're going to go to 10.4.
Take those
Yes, that's
names
right.
out.
That's where we're at there now.
Yeah, so just
Just the names. Yep.
it's really easy because we're talking about Martin Moore Hall and two places. So it's-
Yeah.
and these ones as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah, we're charging on ahead, so sorry. Right. Okay, so we've dealt with the project status. Now we're up to 10.4, renaming of the Martin Memorial Hall and Playground. And Galen?
Yes. Remove the receipt.
You'll move the receipt, so we'll start off with the reception of the report. Moved Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Hero. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Okay, so Galen, the floor's yours.
I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions of the report to start with? I think it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's been a request from what I believe. Sorry, missed you.
No worries. Just a really simple query. The Martin Community Committee was informed, so did they endorse the name?
Unfortunately, they haven't met. There was no quorum met for that meeting, so it hasn't been put in front of them.
Was it not in the order paper?
It was in the order paper, but for the Martin Community Committee, but yeah, the Martin Community Committee unfortunately didn't meet due to a quorum not being met. Councillor Dalgety.
Do they envision that there's going to be some story and explanation around the renaming of the playground? Or is it just going to be renamed? I would love to see that story celebrated with that name.
I certainly would expect so, being part of the blessing there this morning with iwi, who have been involved in that process. The telling of the naming of that playground will have a lot of meaning behind it. Where that's told and where it's written down, I'm not sure, but certainly at the playground, there's a lot of iwi involvement being shown throughout the playground. So, yeah. But are you saying where should it be recorded? Is that what your question is?
Basically, I would love to see, you know, some sort of signage celebrating that name and the explanation behind it.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be appropriate signage down at the playground, and there'll be something on the council's website as well.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Hero.
No questions, but I think I'd like to move recommendations. Have we already moved recommendation 1? Has Councillor
Yes, so it's been received. Yeah.
Recommendation 1?
No recommendation that would be received. Yes, I've moved that. Yep.
Yep. So recommendation 2, as it sits there, is about the reinstatement of the originally intended name. And are you looking to move that? Okay.
Yes.
I'm happy to move.
Yes,
You're happy to move
yeah.
it? Okay.
Yes,
So,
I'm happy to move recommendation 2.
right, okay. Move Councillor Hero, seconded Councillor Dalgety. Now it's open for discussion. Councillor Hero, would you like to speak to your recommendation, please?
Well, I'm speaking to it, and it's come to us, and this has been obviously talked about within that community of people, and so I'm supporting what's been put in front of us as councillors.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Rokoa.
I've got a question that it's come to us saying rename the hall, the original name. Who gave us the original name? is it authentic? Is it an authentic? We see a photo there with it on, but you know, how long has that name been given? Was there something before that?
I can give you some explanation.
Beautiful.
And it is around, that hall was built under the auspices of the RSA, Martin RSA. So they fundraised, they went through the process of building that hall for the Martin community at the time. There has been, it has been named that name in previous times, and for whatever reason that naming has been removed, or maybe been removed for repair and not reinstated, but it is the want of the Martin RSA to actually reinstate the original name onto the hall. Have I got that correct, Galen? Yes.
So subsequent to that, it's not an actual renaming, isn't it? It's just replacing the
It's
lettering on the
reinstating.
wall.
It's reinstating. Clarifying.
Yeah. Kia ora.
So, and that's what the recommendation states, the reinstatement of the originally intended name.
I think, and also through you, that in a number of documents it's referred to as the Martin Memorial Hall, and so the RSA would like to see it go back to the full name on the documentation as well.
Okay, so any further speakers? There being none, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Okay, recommendation 3. So we've reinstated the originally intended name. This is about having the appropriate signage put up. And that pretty much clarifies who's in charge of doing that and where the expenditure will come from. So do we have anyone prepared to move that?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Okay, Councillor Lambert moved, seconded Councillor Ash. Would you like to speak to your?
No, it's fairly straightforward. I think, yeah, good to see it reinstated, the signage.
Any further speakers? Councillor Wilson.
I'm just going to put a little bit of a heads up here to this committee, because what is being signalled and what this motion is that you've just moved, or that you've suggested that we take, signage costs would be an unbudgeted item. We have no idea what the signage costs will be.
Well, correction there. There's been a figure.
But where's the report that backs that figure?
Well,
So, you know, I'm just really nervous. Signage costs would be an unbudgeted amount, and we don't know any report based on what the signage cost is.
Can I ask Jess to provide comment, please?
In the PMO report for this unbudgeted item, we put $20,000. I think yesterday or today the quote came in and it's more like 28,000.
So straight away, that's an alarm bell to me right there. And, you know, subsequent to that, has the signage that we're thinking we're going to be putting on, has it been discussed with the RSA?
We've got feedback from them, yeah, and they've given us an alternate. They like the signage, but they don't like where we plan to put it. They've suggested having it up on the roof next to the big window. But yes, we are doing that consultation with them.
Well, that comes back to my concern about passing this motion. Hence, I'm speaking against it, without some more information and costs associated with what that could be.
Further speakers? Councillor Belvedere.
I'm just interested, have the RSA got any money to put towards this?
We haven't asked.
No.
Okay. Any further speakers? Councillor Hero.
I know that we've already gone through the process of it being moved and seconded, but it hasn't been carried. Is there an ability for us to potentially just make some amendments where the investigation around the costs be done? Somehow I don't know what the wording
I
of
think we could let it lie.
Or what you could do is make an amendment to the motion so long as the mover and seconder agree to that.
look at it at different, that's the whole point. That's what you do.
Amendment to this motion.
We put in so that stands, but it's not moved or it's not put to the vote. So one of the councillors is saying they want to do an amendment. So now you must write the amendment up.
Yeah, if there's an amendment to this that will provide that, are you prepared to look at some wording put forward as an amendment?
I'm quite happy to have an amendment put forward to it, but it was Councillor Hiroa who's raised that, so if she would like to do it. I wouldn't want to. But I'm quite happy to if you wish.
I'm quite happy for Councillor Wilson to give his learned knowledge towards what could be an appropriate.
But we have some dictation of wording.
I'd like to move an amendment that says the unbudgeted expense be more detailed in its investigation and to come back to council.
So you're wanting to remove the be erected? Because but it's a new motion, you can't make it use it as an amendment. We'll just get some wording together first.
That is essentially already been resolved with the email report, it will come back next month.
Okay, so you'll have some more detail around this. Okay, so through the PMO report, this has just signalled that the more detailed costs and where the budget would be expended from will come back. So in actual fact, we can't, I don't believe we can move this motion now until we've got that information in front of us. So if it's at the request, or sorry, at the exception of the mover and seconder, that we remove that motion and let it lie until we've got the information come back in next month's report.
More than happy, quite shocked at that price.
Okay. So Councillor Lambert, are you happy with that too?
Yeah, I just have one question. Is there a figure what we'd consider it too expensive?
Or that will come back in the
We'll wait
report.
later, okay. No, I'm quite happy to, yep.
Project report.
So,
So you're prepared to remove the thing and let us remove your recommendation and let it lie.
Yep.
Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just thinking about Anzac Day and what the Martin RSA might want it to look like for Anzac Day.
Unfortunately, timeframes may not allow.
Okay.
What's the discussion? What has been the discussion? Was there any urgency from their perspective?
No, we haven't made any commitment about getting the signage up before Anzac Day.
Right, thank you. So unfortunately, yeah, the timeframes won't allow. So we'll leave that motion to lie on the table until next month's report with some more accurate information. Okay, now we have another recommendation there now in regards with the name changing of the Martin Memorial Hall Playground to Te Ahuru Mowai Playground. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Rokawa, seconded. Councillor Harper.
It's interesting.
Okay. Councillor Rokawa.
Would I like to speak
You
to
get
it?
to speak to it since you've
Oh.
made the motion.
I think it's pretty much says it for itself. Thank you very much. That it was given, I think the Martin Development Group that asked Ngāti Apa if they to have a name and to be gifted the name by Ngāti Apa. I leave it to those ladies because they did a lot of work. So kudos to them. So yeah, no, I'd like to move that.
And sorry, I must declare a conflict of interest as I am a member of the Martin Development Group. So I should sit out the voting process. Councillor Hero.
Given that Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Given that one of the things around this table that we've talked about is ways of inclusiveness that this council displays, this is as far as I'm concerned, this is an absolute way that we're showing that we don't just talk it, we actually do it. So the support around the table for this type of thing, where it's come not from within council itself, it's coming from your community, and reading that, and we have been involved in it, and I assume that there's been a heck of a lot of other people involved in it. I think that it would be remiss of us not to be supportive of it from the point of view that as councillors we have all made a commitment to have those types of stories told in this fall across the district. So I totally support it.
Thank you. Councillor Ash.
Totally in support of this, and absolutely love the story behind it. And as Councillor Dalgety was saying earlier as well, would love to see that story actually played out. But I did have one question around it, a little bit gun shy, following the resolution beforehand. Is there a cost attached to it? Is there any cost for signage or anything with this name change?
I can provide information that is part of the playground project build cost, and that the signage is part of that.
Love the name.
Okay, we've had 3 speakers for the motion. Is anyone speaking against the motion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay. We're up to 10.5, application from Gentleman Prestige for fee reduction to hire Te Matapihi. Attached, we've got an application, and you've all had an opportunity to read that in the council order paper. And Galen, would you like to speak to this, please?
Firstly, I'd just like to apologise on the very brief report. It was meant to be on the old agenda format, and hence it was just going to be an item, so I apologise for that. Secondly, I've just got an update on the appendix. On the first paragraph in the last sentence, it states that they will be donating all proceeds to Shine. And then if we move down to the last paragraph, it's got that they will be donating $10 for every ticket. We've gone back to clarify that. If they sell all tickets, they will be donating $10 from every ticket sold. If they sell less, say if they only sell 150, the profit will actually be slightly less than that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Can you clarify why you brought it to the table?
Sorry.
Because that's
yes, and the application has also been brought to council to consider because it's outside the chief executive's delegations as per the fees and charges.
Right.
Should this not be excluded?
I don't believe so. No. Yeah, it is under public interest, so yeah, we'll keep it in normal format. Okay, any discussions on the report provided? Councillor Hero.
When I read this, I was trying to think of what the connection was to us, and I was trying to figure out whereabouts was the connection. Is there a connection, or is this group is going just throughout the whole country doing this?
There's no connection.
Yeah. So in my own, I'm just wondering whether or not it's I just can't think of a precedent or something in the past where we've done something where somebody that hasn't necessarily had a connection to us in some way, shape or form, because at the end of the day, that's actually it's a commercial thing, isn't it? So I mean, that's great that they want to do that, but actually that's a commercial business transaction that Gentleman I'm sure it's going to, I was actually going to go to it, to be honest.
From time to time, we do have requests from groups requesting council consider a waiver or reduction in fees, and that's simply what they've done.
Okay, so there's an option of a couple of recommendations there that we either agree to reduce the all haulage or we make no reduction. So do I have any councillor that's prepared to put either of those motions on the table? Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to move number 2, no reduction in the haulage fee. I'm happy to speak to that if I get a second.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Carter. Right, you have a seconder, so your opportunity.
Yeah, looking through it and reading through it twice, it doesn't fit local non-profit organisation fee. It simply doesn't fit, no matter, whilst their intentions may be good to donate potentially $10 to Shine, it simply doesn't fall within the scope of what our policy states. This is a professional organisation travelling throughout the district, and I don't feel it fits within the scope of what has been suggested in recommendation 1 to reduce it based on again local non-profit organisation fee. So I don't know how we can even have that as an option because it does not fit in my opinion.
Any further speakers? Councillor Ash.
Yeah, I'll be voting against this actually. I would have been quite happy for them to have a reduction in their fee. Shine does amazing work, and very rarely do we ever get an opportunity to see any businesses or organisations actually supporting the work that Shine does, and Shine does actually work within the district. Yeah, so I mean it's not an event that I'd actually go to, but I do applaud the work that they're doing, the contribution that they'd be doing to Shine.
Any further speakers? All right, there's been none. Councillor Dalgety, you nearly had your hand raised.
Sorry, so has there been any checking whether that money would go locally?
I think in Appendix 1, we did go back to them initially, and they have come back and said that it goes to Shine and it's up to them, up to Shine how it's distributed.
Okay, Councillor Okawa.
Just a question, Shine, is it a national abuse charity? Kia ora.
A question perhaps staff could answer.
They support, yes.
Okay, all right. I think we'll put this to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation that we do not reduce the haulage fee? All right. Those against? Okay, I think that's carried, so there'll be no reduction in the haulage fee.
Did you want to do, sorry, did you want to do a number of amendments?
Oh, I'm happy to, but it looked pretty straightforward. There were only 2 against, so I'm suggesting there were 4. I saw at least 4 or 5 hands up, so that's really clear. So you don't wish your votes to be recorded? No, right, thank you. Right, we'll move on to 10.6, procurement of contractor for work at Mangaweka Campground. And who is, oh Jess, you're taking us through this, thank you.
Happy to take any questions. Essentially, I've asked to go outside the procurement policy for this specific occasion. It is extremely hard to get multi-trade contractors there, and we're in quite a fortunate position of we have trades working there at the moment on the bridge, or we have this establishing relationship with Pumelo, both of which would be good options for us. We are finding across the district and even with Manawatu District Council that when we're tendering projects, we're getting either none or 1 response. And for the value of this, you know, around 150,000, we don't
feel that we will have much success at all of getting tenders if we go out to 3 and let them all know that they'll be bidding against each other. So we recommend that we go direct and negotiate with Permaloo and with a contractor that's already working there.
Thank you. So perhaps we'll take, someone move the reception of the report. Councillor Hiroa and seconded Councillor Dalgety. All those in favour?
No.
Carried. And now questions of the report. Councillor Hiroa.
I have no questions of the report, having read through it and just getting clarification from Jess. So I'd like to put up that I'd like to move 5.2A, that we endorse exploring direct engagement with Mangawhaka Bridge contractor and Permaloo for the pavilion re-roof and new ablution block.
Do we have a seconder, Councillor Dalgety? Right. Would you like to speak to your recommendation? Do we have any speakers? Councillor Wilson.
I've just got a concern about it without dragging in. It's a question for Jess. I'm just noting in the report, and it's a little thing that I had signalled. It says that the budgets for the ablution box pavilion roof have been carried over each year and remain in council's budget. Council holds the following budgets from this project, etc., etc. Are we and have we re-evaluated that the funds that we hold are currently accurate to do the job that we're now requesting them to do?
Yes.
It's a good question. There is a really good chance that they will not be. At the moment, over the last 5 years, I would recommend we add 10% on to construction costs every year because of the boom we're seeing at the moment. I would prefer that we continue to explore the options, and obviously won't be awarding any tenders in excess of our budgets without coming back to council. I think you could reasonably assume to see me here next month or the month after, presenting the actual cost and potential ways to fund that or to cancel the works. I'm not asking you to commit to additional funds here, just really to look at procurement options.
Okay, thank you.
So in essence, you're going after them to get a costing done on it through the workers that are there, and you'll come back to this council.
Because it would require your approval for a derivation from the procurement policy if the recommended option is such.
Okay. Okay, any further speakers then? Does that satisfy you?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Your question, sorry. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay.
Just a bit of clarification here, Chair. I don't think I moved that.
You move. Okay. Sorry.
Tracy moved it.
Councillor Hiroa and Councillor Dalgety.
Thank you.
Okay, item 11 on the agenda. Reports for our information. Oh, okay, right. Sorry. Okay, we're on to item 12. Minutes and recommendations from the committees. We have a large list there of the following minutes to be received. So,
Council 1 can be removed. That was, I think,
okay, is someone prepared to move those as a block of minutes?
Happy to.
Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Rolkawa. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, we have some recommendations out of those minutes, and the first one there is from the Creative New Zealand Community Meeting. The Council considers the recommendation from the Creative New Zealand Committee on the 20th of October 2020 that the Creative New Zealand Funding Assessment Committee recommended council to consider reimbursing committee members for their attendance and or mileage for committee meetings. Who knows about this and perhaps some background behind it? Councillor Hero.
No, I don't know about this at all. I'm just, when I was reading that, I was trying to find where that corridor was in the minutes. So I totally missed it.
Yeah.
Look, I'll just provide a little bit of clarification. So I've had the team looking at whether some of the minutes have come to the council and also some of these recommendations. So my apology, I thought this was just from a meeting the other day. I didn't realise it was the October one. So if I just ask your indulgence to leave this one, and I'll do a bit more investigation on it for next time.
Would just ask, if I may, Chair, is that actually within our scope to even, is that actually within council's scope to do such a thing?
I'm not certain, but yeah.
It is. We get a pool of funding for remuneration. As a council, you could choose to pay some
It falls
mileage out
within
of
that then, does it?
It would, but I would like to have a look at this one. So
Yeah, I think we need
just
to be
leave it.
provided a bit more information in regards with it. We've certainly got a lot of committees that we have that meet all around the place and could set precedents. So it's just more information to come from us. Okay, yes.
So this one is no longer required either. This was when the speed limit bylaw came to was
Okay.
coming to council. So this is superseded now. So this can be deleted.
Thank you. And moving up, the Hunterville Community Committee have been very busy and I've got a number of recommendations. So we'll go through them. We have the first recommendation there. That the Hunterville Community Committee recommends to council that they advise on the frequency of the $300 to Hunterway Bulletin. Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, I can speak to these. I was at the meeting. We were granted $300 by the council towards the Hunterway Bulletin, and the request is basically, will that be a one-off, an annual, a monthly, or whatever?
So was that a grant from their small projects fund or was it a grant from council?
Well, Carol, he did sterling work finding this in the minutes. It was recommended back in July last year, I think. We sort of got a bit lost in the system, but the council granted. Where the funding came from, I'm not too sure.
Yes. Context. So we did look back to see what had happened. So a request came from the Hunterville Community Committee for $300 towards their bulletin. Council at that time agreed to that to be paid from the small grants. But then the committee said, well, what happens about next month, or how many times are we getting this payment? So I said to Councillor Lambert that was never part of that original resolution. So the Hunterville Community Committee needed to advise council now what they actually wanted from us. So they're saying that they want us to advise on the frequency. So I suppose a couple of questions, if I can.
Yeah.
How often does the bulletin get produced?
It's monthly. They would like it monthly, but obviously they'll take whatever's offered.
Okay. And I'll say this without saying it. We don't provide this funding for other community committee bulletins. So this would be an exception.
Okay.
Thank you. I think the small projects fund that's held by each community committee is decided upon by that community committee, and if they wish to fund a bulletin, whether it's a monthly one, and they make that decision, that's fine. But I think as a precedence from council to fund one community committee for their bulletin, which there's a number of bulletins throughout our district that get produced and get funding from wherever. They don't come to council for that funding. So yeah, I'm probably speaking to a motion that's not even there at the moment. So sorry.
Can I-
Councillor Ash.
Yeah, sure. Can I speak to this just a little bit? Now, that may have actually been a meeting that I was at, the Hunterville meeting that I was certainly there one evening when this was on up for discussion. And the thought around it was that council does actually fund Tie Happy, Bulls, Martin to produce a newsletter of sorts. And so obviously the MOU partners do receive a small amount of money to do various communications. One of those parts of the communication is a newsletter. So from my recollection of the conversation at the time, $300 represented an annual amount of communications that the other MOU partners get, if that makes any sense. I mean, this is a wee whiles ago, but I do recall the conversation.
Chair, just an effort to move this item along. That's not specific in what this request is. I think we need to go back to the Hunterville Community Committee. They need to clearly state via a meeting and via a formal request what it is they actually require. The $300, we've got nothing to even discuss. We don't know if they're talking weekly, monthly, annually. There's absolutely nothing to discuss. I'm afraid we can't even discuss it because we're only making suggestions and assumptions of what the thinking may have been with the Hunterville Community Committee. Until they come back to us something very clear as to what it is they're requesting of council, I see no further point in discussing this matter.
Well, I guess they're asking for us, they're asking us to advise on what that $300 funding.
Clarification, I don't think it's up to us to advise them.
If you were to ask me, should you ask me, my response would be staff consider that it was a one-off.
Right, okay. So can we take that as an undertaking to provide that information back to?
Should you resolve to, because it's a recommendation.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So if this is moved, that we can provide, staff can provide that advice back to the Hunterville Community Committee. So do we have someone prepared to move that recommendation, and then that will be the outcome? Councillor Wilson.
That staff advise on the frequency of the $300 to the Hunterville board.
Seconded by Councillor Dalgety. Right, I think we've had enough discussion. We can make a vote. So all those in favour? Against? Carried. Sorry, drag that out. Thank you. The Hunterville Community Committee recommends to council that they advise the Hunterville Community Committee on the costs and requirements to create disability access to the Hunterville Town Hall. Councillor Carter.
Yeah.
You wanted to move that?
No, I was just going to speak to it if you want.
Right, so
sorry,
can you provide
some
costs?
We always get mixed up. Two good-looking guys at it.
So similar. Why don't you take your glasses off?
This comes from a community member who pointed out there is no wheelchair access to the Hunterville Town Hall, which I'm assuming very safely that you need one by law. So it was really just feedback as to what would be required to bring the town hall up to legal status wheelchair access, basically.
Okay, so we're asking staff to provide some costings.
Basically what is required. Is there a thing for the ramp, like the length, the height, how far it has to be,
Is there difficulty if this recommendation was put? Just on providing
It's us working at a cost.
So,
can I just ask a question of Councillor Lambert with his humble knowledge? Is there disability toilets in the hall?
Yes, I'm pretty sure the men's toilet is a disability one, is a disability toilet. I'm 99.9% sure.
Thank you.
okay, so do we have someone prepared to move the motion, the recommendation? Councillor Lambert. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dalgety. Any discussion? Otherwise, I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Right, it looks like that gets passed. So Staff will take that on board to provide that information back to the Huntable Community Committee. The third recommendation that the Community Committee recommends to Council that they advise business owner, based on results of survey, current truck parking spaces, can
I can speak to
provide
that.
some background to that.
I actually missed the original meeting where this came up, but from what I gather, there was a business in Hunterville that wasn't too happy about the trucks parking in front of their business. So they conducted a survey amongst the other businesses around Hunterville who were more than happy with the way things are. So they, as it said, they'd like to recommend that the current truck parking spaces remain as they are.
Do we need to do anything with that? I mean, we're leaving them as they are. It's status quo.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, I think they're just trying to advise council if there was either further feedback that they have done a survey amongst things. So I think that was the idea. But as I say, I missed the original meeting where the issue was first raised. So.
I don't think we need to make any decision on that.
Well, I'm just got a little alarm bell ringing here. The Huntable Community Committee recommends to council that they advise business owner based on a survey results that the council didn't initiate, didn't have any input into, and has no idea where they went to. So why would we even be considering that? In fact, it's somewhat alarming that that's even there.
So we haven't moved any recommendation yet. Councillor Hero.
I'd like to say that, quite frankly, all of these, well, definitely 1, 2, 3, a number of these things, I wonder how it comes to us. So what is I'd like to know across the board, across all of the different community boards and also the community committees themselves, there is a pot of money that they hold, I understand, small grants. What's the threshold that those types of things like come to us? What is the threshold? Because to me, some of the things in my mind, it's like if they don't hit the threshold, why are they coming into to get sign off from around the table if something's worth $100 or $200? All I want to know is what's the threshold that we get to where suddenly it comes to us and we've got to make a decision on something.
Is there any advice that can be provided? I mean, at the community committee meetings, there generally is a council representative, an elected member at those, and more often than not, that elected member should provide some advice as to whether it should even come to council, and that should be the filter that filters out a lot of the stuff. So maybe some direction from the next council meeting, the next community committee meeting, as to, is this legitimately a council recommendation to make a decision on, or can we just make that at the council?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on board. I took more of the view that I don't want to be dictatorial to them, but having said what you said, as I say, the truck one, I missed the original meeting when that came up, so with it, but yeah, I'll take that on board.
Yeah, I think if we give some direction as to what's really
council matter
and what they can decide upon. Councillor Dalgety.
Just a comment, really. This is probably the first meeting that we've been conducted. I wasn't at this meeting, unfortunately, but without the staff support that were previously offered.
Thank you, but yeah, just perhaps some direction. At the next meeting. So the information there about supporting the Huntable St John's new build and recommends an amount is put into the LTP. That's a directive that was given to the Hunterville Community Committee, at the Hunterville meeting last night, that is a submission process that they should submit to, and that is a process to get it into the LTP.
Absolutely.
It's not a council recommendation that we send straight in there.
I had a discussion with the mayor and he said would reinforce that thinking and see it and recommended they put this through this system.
Well, we can't support one until there's a submission put into the LTP
The
process.
wording was they have a right to make this recommendation, so.
Sorry. There's a submission process for all members of the public and community groups to submit on the LTP when it is produced, when the consultation document is produced for submissions to go into, and that's the process. We've already made the document, or the draft has been made at present to go out, and then the submission process for any other things will come out during that month period, and that would be the time that Huntaville Community Committee should submit at that time.
I totally understand that, but with discussion, this basically the committee wanted to reinforce how they felt, and this was a way of doing that.
That's fine. We can't do anything other than note their recommendation. I don't think we can sit here and say that basically we would be making a decision as council to support it when we haven't seen all the other submissions.
Yeah, that's
So
fine, but that's their thinking.
that's fine. Yeah. Okay, and the final recommendation, the Huntaville Community Committee recommends to council that they provide an alternative option to meetings via Zoom. What sort of capability?
Well, it's really a question, is it possible or not?
Provide an alternate option to meetings via Zoom.
Are they talking about zooming members into the committee meeting?
Yeah, just some of them find it a struggle to get to the meetings on time. They're just wondering if it's possible they could Zoom into the community meeting.
I'm not sure what sort of requirement is there, Wi-Fi or internet access at the meeting room?
Investigate that. I can't say yes or no now, based on the level of IT support that's required.
They need to have an account.
So if council investigated, so if the recommendation stated that council investigate an option to for the ability to provide Zoom for community committee meetings.
Yeah, that's something.
Well, yeah, is someone prepared to move a recommendation along those lines? You're happy to?
Move, yep.
Councillor Lambert, so about the investigation of providing Zoom for community committee meetings. Seconded by Councillor Hero.
Yeah.
Is there an issue with how that's written?
So that's their recommendation to us, so we need to put
A suggestion back? to them?
suggestion back.
Okay, so we can't actually,
No, we can't change, that's their resolution, we can't change
okay,
that.
can we go back to the Huntaville Community Committee and suggest that we investigate it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we remove that recommendation and it's an undertaking.
Yeah, it's an undertaking that.
Okay. Councillor Rokawa.
Just a query regarding that. Not only the Huntaville Community Committee, but all the other committees. Is it possible that council looks at, because council has they pay for the, council are able to have a Zoom link. They're able to get a number, because they've got an account with Zoom, because you have to have an account, and longer than 40 minutes because the rest are free. Yeah, well, it's free for 40 minutes, otherwise longer than that you have to pay, you have to be an account holder. Has council, if one of the committees are asking, if this committee's asking, any of the other councils, could a Zoom number for each community committee council link be set up for them to have a Zoom? a Zoom link for them if they wanted to go in, like Bulls community might have a Zoom link that's dedicated to them?
I think.
Well, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah. I'll ask for some advice.
You've asked us to investigate Hunterville.
Yes.
We'll come back with the results of the investigation, and if you ask us to do that on every other committee meeting, then that's your choice. But at least by investigating Hunterville, we'll get an understanding of the resource requirement and costs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dalgety and then Councillor Hero. You had your hand up, Councillor Dalgety, or?
Oh, I just, these recommendations, I just feel there's been a little bit of confusion around. I just want to reiterate that this is the first meeting without the support of staff. And so, you know, there are implications of that.
Thank you. Councillor Hero.
So probably just a comment in lieu of what that is of, I'm also very mindful about one of the things that we've been told is that the amount of direction that we're giving from within this realm out to staff that we want this and this. You know, we've got to also, I feel very mindful about that of saying, we want you to investigate this, we want you to investigate this, we want you to investigate that. In my head, investigating something that could have been, if we took Hunterville out of it, but investigating something that could quite easily have been sorted there and then, having to then have to come back around this table and us getting involved in so much into it. That's the consequence. That's one of the consequences of us removing ourselves out. But I also think that that whole thing from a point of view of sitting in the Taipi Community Board meetings, of making sure that we keep on track, because if we don't need to come back around this table as a person that attends those and make the decision instead of having to keep heading things into here where actually you can make the decision. I think that people get a little bit scared that they get scared about making the decision.
I appreciate that comment, and at the end of the day, a community committee can make a recommendation to council. It's up to council whether they accept that recommendation and do something about it, or whether we don't. And with some of these we haven't, and some we have. So there is a process that might seem a bit tedious, but Hunterville Community Committee have been active, but we've made the decisions either way, whether we support it. So, do you have any further?
I think I just acknowledge Councillor Dalgety's point that this is the first meeting without that administrative support. We would kindly ask, though, that the councillors that do attend just share that the verbatim, the word for word is what's presented, and there is no interpretation. You can only decide on the word for word, and if it doesn't make sense there as a councillor, then it's going to be very difficult to present it accurately here.
Okay, so I guess that's to take on board for all elected members that attend these meetings, to perhaps give some clarity to a recommendation that might be getting tossed around the table at those committee meetings, that we may ensure that they have clarity. As you can see, some confusion around the table if it's not worded correctly. Okay, any further recommendations out of those minutes? Pretty well at the end, so we are now at the point of moving into public excluded, and we have a public excluded order paper. So can I have someone move that we move into public excluded? Councillor Hero, seconded Councillor Wilson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.